Welcome, Rockville. Today is August 5th, 2024. We'll begin meeting number 19-24. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any changes to the agenda?
Madam Mayor and council members, we have two ads from Friday evening to our agenda for this evening, and it reflects on the printed version online. It's 3A. The Mayor and Council will read the Open Meetings Act Compliance Board opinion, the acknowledgement and announcement, and under old and new business, we will appoint a chair to our Personnel Appeals Board.
Thank you. I think there was an additional item as well, correct, for consent?
Yes, consent. The last item on consent, I think it was E.
Yes, thank you. Just want to make sure everyone is following. And I do have one additional change just to support our staff. We have several consent agenda items, and so that they may go home after those are approved. If they're approved, then we would like to move those before the presentations, if that's okay. Colleagues? Okay. I also wanted to acknowledge you have four of us here in person, but we have our council members who are also appearing virtually. They are with us and joining. Councilman Van Grack, Councilman Miles, and Councilman Valeri. They'll be piping up throughout the meeting, and they are certainly here. Okay. With that, I'm going to proceed with the acknowledgement. Last week, the city received an Open Meetings Act Compliance Board opinion dated July 29, 2024, in response to a complaint the board received from a resident blogger. He alleged 4 violations of the Open Meetings Act occurred at the Mayor and Council's May 24, 2024 special meeting. The allegations were lack of public notice, unusual meeting time, delayed posting of revised agenda, and introduction of new agenda item. The city filed a response to the complaint, and based on the information provided, the board agreed with the city that the Mayor and Council's meeting time and introduction of new agenda item related to the appointment of a new acting city manager was in alignment with the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. The board also concluded that the Mayor and Council failed to provide reasonable advance notice of the meeting and failed to provide an agenda in a timely manner. Importantly, at the May 20th public meeting, Mayor and Council meeting, the Mayor and Council did share publicly that there would be a meeting scheduled on May 24th and noted the topic of Molly Price dwelling unit agreement discussion at that public meeting. However, the agenda was posted online May 3rd, that's the online posting, before the meeting, one day before. And nonetheless, we will endeavor to provide more advance notice of special meetings and making sure that they're posted online. Thank you. Now we'll move to the city manager's report.
Mayor Ashton, members of City Council, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I have 3 bits of information, and it's all good news. So, arguably the most important issue facing the city is the provision of affordable housing. So anytime we have good news in that space, I'm going to present that this evening. We do have another nice grouping of moderately priced dwelling unit program units coming online. That program continues to be very successful in the city of Rockville. This fall, 68 brand new MPD rental units will be coming in to the Milton project. Really excited about that. So if residents are interested in that, we would encourage them to go to the Milton at Twin Brook Apartments and look into it. So again, more excitement, more new units coming online to help those folks that are housing distressed in our community. Secondarily, our housing and community development staff reports that the middle and high school boys camp, that is really the Latino Youth Development Summer Soccer Camp, had a really cool field trip. They went to the National Zoo together, and that's really about team building and keeping kids in safe spaces and get to know one another, creating community. These are all Gen Zers, so the comments that they said to us was that it was dank. They also said that now they're all fam. So if you guys need me to interpret that for you later on, let me know. But it's really cool that these kids were able to hang out and hopefully create some bonds that will be lasting for quite a long time in the city. And lastly, very, very pleased to tell you that the Rockville City Police Department was reaccredited by the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. That is the CALEA designation. And that designation and accreditation is earned through a rigorous and comprehensive review of professional standards in law enforcement. Pleased to tell you that that is a designation that not many police departments in the whole United States receive, and yet our Rockville Police Department has had it since 1994. That's impressive, and this community should be very proud of that. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to add to your comments on the Maui price dwelling units. In addition to those 68 for rental, there will be some coming online for purchase at 3 to 4 different new property sites. And I say that because there is a requirement to have a workshop completed prior to being able to enter that program. So please feel free to look up Rockville Maui price dwelling unit homes for sale as well as homes for rent. And the last thing I wanted to add is we have, as part of our Rockville Sister City activities, some students from Richard Montgomery High School going to Germany this week to play as part of their band. So we wish them well, and we appreciate that they'll be representing the city of Rockville. Any questions on the city manager's report? Congrats to our police department, and also thanks to them for all the work they've been doing to keep our community safe. We'll now move to proclamations and recognitions. We have one this evening declaring National Night Out, which is a big community event. I won't steal that thunder, but Councilmember Fulton will be leading us in that proclamation.
So speaking of our amazing police department and big nights, tomorrow is National Night Out, both in Rockville and around the country, which is an amazing opportunity both to build more bonds around community policing, but also just to build more bonds as a community. So I will read today's proclamation. Whereas the National Association of Town Watch is sponsoring a unique nationwide crime and drug prevention program on August 6, 2024 called National Night Out. And whereas the 41st Annual National Night Out provides a unique opportunity for Rockville residents to join forces with thousands of other communities across the country to promote cooperative police community crime and drug prevention efforts, and whereas the residents of Rockville communities play a vital role in assisting the Rockville City Police Department through joint crime, drug, and violence prevention efforts in the city and are supporting National Night Out 2024 locally. And whereas it is essential that all residents of Rockville be aware of the importance of crime prevention programs and the impact of their participation, the impact that has on reducing crime and drug abuse in the community. Now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Rockville, Maryland, do hereby proclaim August 6, 2024 as National Night Out and urge the entire Rockville community to be a part of this special event and participate in the fight against crime and drugs. Madam Mayor, I move the proclamation.
Second. It's been seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. Chief Brito, do you want to come say a few words and take the proclamation?
It's hard just to say a few words. So thank you very much on behalf of the Rockville City Police Department and more importantly our community. Thank you for this proclamation. It's been 40 years now since 1984, which National Night Out started. And it's something that I always like to say is that it's very, very important that we engage with compassion, with empathy, and we communicate effectively. We always want to be part of our community, not apart from it. So that's very, very important for us. So thank you very much, Madam Mayor, council members. Appreciate the proclamation and the distinct honor. Thank you again.
Since you have the floor, I'll just note that the Rockville City Police Department has been working to support a culture of community engagement, right? So This is not just about policing. It's actually about creating relationships in the community. I've heard that some places, some jurisdictions have 3 National Night Outs, we have over 20. So thank you to everyone in the communities who are planning these because community matters. And while you have the mic, do you want to talk about our gun buyback?
Yes,
Since that's
yes.
coming up.
We, gun violence, and not only in our community, we've had some gun violence here, but not only locally, regionally, and nationally is significant. So we've taken a very proactive step for the last 3 years with the support of the mayor to initiate a gun buyback program, which we've had. We started in 22 in August of 23, and now August 17th of 24. We have partnered with, like no other police department in the nation, with our state's attorney, John McCarthy, to help us forward that. The last 2 years, we've recovered over 600 firearms voluntarily, from rifles, pistols, shotguns, ghost guns, assault weapons, all of which, once we have them, they're all destroyed immediately. So very, very important for us. There's no one else in this region that does it the way we do. And I'm very proud of our partnership, not only with our state's attorney, John McCarthy, but with our community. And they've been significant. We're having that at Redgate Park, which we've had the last 2 years. The first year I did it, we did it at the Rockville City Police Department, and we made a determination that we needed a bigger boat. Like, you remember the captain or the police chief from Jaws said we needed a bigger boat. We needed a bigger boat because we had traffic backed up for about a half a mile down the road, people turning in firearms. So we chose Redgate Park, which is a great venue for people to voluntarily turn in their firearms. It's all listed on our website. It's a great event, great participation from our community. But thank you very much. Thank you very much. Oh.
Thank you. Now we'll move to agenda item 6, board and commission appointment. Today we'll be reappointing Kristen Kaplan to serve a 3-year term until July 1, 2027. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Fulton.
I move to reappoint Kristen Kaplan to serve a full 3-year term until July 1st, 2027.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Wonderful. Thank you. It's unanimous. All right. Now we have community forum. All persons addressing the mayor and council shall speak in a civil and courteous manner. We welcome everyone to join and share your voice. Please be respectful of others. You'll have 3 minutes, and speakers will be called in the order of requests received. We ask that you adhere to the 3 minutes allowed. There will be a time clock in front of you so you can track your time. You'll hear an audible beep at the end of your 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name, whether you're from the city of Rockville, and in-person speakers will be called before virtual speakers. Our first speaker is John Becker, followed by David Bekennel. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Becker.
Good evening. My name is John Becker. I am a resident homeowner at 148 Monroe Street, which is part of the Americana Center across from the Rockville Metro Station. Earlier today, I submitted a letter requesting mayor and council, along with others, to set up a town hall meeting for the town center residents, homeowners, businesses, retail, office, and even people who patronize and visit, and that a number of people, including mayor and council, chief of police, Reddy, Morguard, maybe our other representatives, attend this town hall. There was one in the last decade, which was a large event, and I think there is enough concern here from people around the town center area to have a repeat of that just to see what is going on in the world and in their home for their homes. So I would like the mayor and council to follow up on that, especially when you return here in September. Number two, there is at Tuesday's mayor and Montgomery County Council meeting, they passed the, I should say, legislation that will go for public hearing on September 17th regarding the noise cameras and the selection of sites. I heartily, strenuously request that mayor and council, members of our police department, please attend that public hearing, because we need all the help we can get to make sure that Rockville is part of that process. There were some other things I brought up last Monday that I did not have a chance to get to, but I will while you're all out of town on vacation, so you'll have a nice little list of things to consider when you return. One of the things I did want to step into and look at as far as stoplights and speed cameras on East Jefferson, Rockville Pike, and Veers Mill. I know there are some already on Veers Mill, but in these other two locations, the speeding is rampant, and whatever the implications and how difficult it is, it's about time the process starts so we can go ahead and get something posted there. It's just constant, and it's all times of the day and night, and it does need to be looked into. There are other things here. I'll comment on the the tree ordinance later on, and the rest of the items I had mentioned last week. I will send you all a nice little email with photos and requests to pursue these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Welcome, David Beckerl. Please help me pronounce that name. And welcome. We appreciate you coming.
Thank you very much. If I may provide the mayor and council with some demonstratives. Thank you again for this opportunity to approach you. It also gives me an opportunity to wear white slacks one more time before Labor Day. My name is David Beckerly. I was born and raised here in Rockville. I am currently a resident of 5 Starlight Court in the Horizon Hill neighborhood of Rockville, now for 29 years. Today I wanted to speak to you with regards to City Ordinance 250905, which allows for fences to be placed anywhere on the applicant's property, provided it abides by the prescribed height limitations without any consideration whether the placement would extend in front of the physical footprint of an adjacent property's house. Upon further investigation, I've discovered that cul-de-sac properties have no designation classification in Ordinance 2509. Even though their shape, size, and orientation are uniquely different from the typical residential properties for which the code was written, cul-de-sac properties by design are pie-shaped and more susceptible to a portion of the shared property line between neighbors extending in front of the physical footprint of the adjacent property's house. This concern arises when placement of a neighbor's boundary fence will extend in front of the physical footprint of their house, hindering their view from the street. Since the street frontage area of a cul-de-sac plots are significantly narrower than typical properties at the curb, and an obstruction of any size blocking a driveway's view of the sidewalk creates a safety concern for pedestrians due to the inability to be seen by vehicles with enough time to react. This is especially true for playful children and pets on extendable leashes moving swiftly along neighborhood sidewalks. While every Rockville resident has the right to privacy, and the city has granted homeowners the privilege of enclosing their property from public view, Rockville residents feel that it is in the public interest for fence placement restrictions to be placed on cul-de-sac properties and those shared boundary line properties to ensure these proposed fence placements do not impact public safety nor impact the view of an adjacent property's view from the street by a neighbor's fence existing in front of the physical footprint of the adjacent property's house, thus lessening that property's curb appeal and resale value. I would like for an amendment to Ordinance 250904 to stipulate that one's fence may not encroach in front of the adjacent property's house, And that's really all that I have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, David Fallick. Fallick.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Follick. I live on East Jefferson Street in Twinbrook. And I come with a request, and I also want to give a thank you. My request is that the vote to exclude mandatory hard caps on rental renewal rates that took place July 8th be reconsidered, because outside of a rent freeze, those mandatory hard caps are the best solution we have to ever increasing cost of housing that renters are ever increasingly struggling to meet those costs. Housing is a basic human need. Like I said on July 8th, where else are we supposed to live? We're priced out of the market to buy houses and many, many, many condominiums. So please reconsider that. I'd also like to thank Council Member Isola Shaw and Council Member David Miles for their vote against that exclusion and for their understanding of our struggle and supporting us in our time of need. I know I personally, in the next city election, will remember that when I go to vote. And there are roughly, I inferred from city census data, 30,000 other people in the city who live in rental units. And they'll be thankful as well. And I had other things to say. This is like my 7th time here, and I still get nervous when I speak. Code enforcement does not lower rent. It's like if we have a pothole and we vote to enforce people stopping at a stop sign and vote to exclude filling in the pothole with asphalt. In the meantime, people get flat tires and break their axles. That's what it's like for renters to focus on something else, and rents going up and up and up and up and up. We had some representatives here, I remember from Pollinger and Commodore, saying that it would hurt them. I doubt that very much. Federal Realty owns my building, and I know earlier this year, in the first quarter, they had $100 million operating profit, according to their website. We're the little people, and we need our local government to intervene. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Thank you. We'll now move to agenda item 8, presentation of the Transportation and Mobility Commission report. And we have some members from the Transportation and Mobility Commission. If we could please extend Ms. Kleinman a mic.
Madam Mayor, I thought we were going to move
Oh,
consent
sorry.
up.
Yes, that's
Sorry.
right. Thank you.
Just a minute.
Sorry. Thank you very much. We're going to move to consent next. Agenda item 9A, B, and C. Consent agenda item A is the authorization for the city manager to sign a subaward agreement relating to hazard mitigation assistance between the Maryland Department of Emergency Management regarding the Flood Resiliency Master Plan. Item B, approve and authorize the city manager to execute a revocable license agreement with KBSG Associates to construct a sidewalk within Mattie Stepanek Park. Item C, authorization for the city manager to execute a memorandum of understanding with Maryland Workers' Compensation Commission. Item D, approval of the proposed grant-supported public art project to be installed and approved on sections of public right-of-way on Beale Avenue in the city's town center, and granting the city manager authority to approve the final design due to project and grant timeline constraints. This relates to the Bloomberg grant. Item E, approval of the moderately priced dwelling unit program for sale units, flats at Northside Phase 1, and authorization for city manager to execute the moderately priced dwelling unit homeownership program agreement between the mayor and council and Pulte Home Company, subject to approval as to legal form by the city attorney. And item F, approval of mayor and council minutes. What say you, colleagues? Anyone need to pull? All right. Do you have a motion to approve them? Councilmember Jack?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to move item 9A, B, C, D, E, and F.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Councilmember Shaw seconds. Thank you, Councilmember Jackson
Ma'am.
and Shaw.
Are we gonna have discussion?
Yes, feel free. Go ahead. I see
Thank you, Madam.
Councilmember Valeri's hand, and it is, all these items are introduced, motion made and seconded. But I did ask if anyone wanted to pull. Sorry, we didn't see you. Councilmember Miles and then Councilmember Valeri second.
The MPDU one was added since the publishing of the book on Thursday, is that correct?
That's correct. So the city clerk and I know the city manager sent something out to us via email this week noting that that was added, and the clerk noted that addition when I asked for agenda review changes. So yes, those are the standard form.
I mean, I can kind of get through it quick. Were there significant changes made since we last discussed it?
I'm
I just
going to
wanna know,
allow
right?
the city manager to explain. I believe it's the form agreements that we've all approved the template for, but please feel free.
Thank you, Mayor. You're correct. The form is the same. The property owner really just shifted the units from a commitment to the entire property, two properties into just one property. So that's really the fundamental change to it. Otherwise, everything is what you've seen before in your standard profile.
And the same number of total units.
Same number of units.
That's right.
Correct.
Okay. Did the city attorney have anything to add? No? Okay. All right. Dr. Miles, do you have any other questions?
That's all. Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Valeri. You're on mute. We can't hear Councilmember Valeri. I will try to call you quickly. 1 second. Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
can you hear me okay?
I think we can hear you online now. Go ahead. I just hung up the phone. Can you speak again?
Can you hear me okay?
It's working, yes.
Don't know what's going on. Madam Mayor, the Bloomberg grant consent item.
You go ahead and please feel free to ask your question.
Okay. My question is in regards to the input from RPAC, RBAC, and the Transportation Mobility Commission insofar as the final design. I want to ensure that the commissions and committees that played an important role, along with our very able Mr. Bruckner, in getting this grant, also have an opportunity to form the final design.
City Manager, please feel free. Mr. Jeff Mahalik.
Mayor Ashton, Councilmember Larry, we can ensure that we'll take the final product and make sure that those advisory boards, commissions, and individuals get a look at it before I sign off on it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I believe that was something we talked about at the Cultural Arts Commission as well. Thank you very much. Councilmember Valeri.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Anything else? All right, thank you. All right, so motion's been made. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye if you're able. All right, I'm looking
Aye.
online. I see everyone. Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move back to the presentation of the Transportation and Mobility Commission. And do we have a mic for Ms. Kleiman? Thank you. Welcome and thank you. Also welcome Brian Barnett Woods from our city team.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Barnett Woods. I am the staff liaison for the Rockville Transportation and Mobility Commission. I'm here today to introduce Ms. Kathleen Kleiman. She is the chair of the Transportation and Mobility Commission, and she's going to be providing a presentation and summary of their annual report, which is in your packet. And with that, I'll hand it off to you, Kathleen.
Thank you. And anyone in the audience, excuse my back, please. Thank you for this opportunity, Council and Mayor. In March of 2023, the Traffic and Transportation Commission was transformed with a new name and a new mission. It became the Transportation and Mobility Commission, with newly defined responsibilities with a focus on all modes of transportation, including walking, rolling, bicycling, transit, and driving. The Commission primarily serves to provide guidance to the Mayor and Council and the Planning Commission as it relates to multimodal transportation issues for the city. The Commission recognizes the vital link that effective transportation networks contribute to economic development, sustainable communities, social activity, equity, and resilience in Rockville. There has been many statements made from the Commission to the Council already, and they are available in your packet. These include budget priorities for fiscal year 24 and 25 that advance safe multimodal infrastructure projects and increase accessibility. They include providing intersection safety by requesting studies and increased use of such items as no right turn on red, leading pedestrian intervals, and better signage. We've also requested the updating of the Comprehensive Transportation and Review, known as the CTR, which is the process to make the process better to account for people walking, rolling, and bicycling in the development community. And also the transportation comments. The Commission made transportation comments to the pedestrian master plan, the town center master plan, to ensure policy and infrastructure recommendations advance equitable multimodal transportation. As said earlier, the TMC also submits and has submitted comments to the Planning Commission related to the large development projects to not only account for traffic impacts, but also would provide for accessible facilities. The Commission is a dedicated and informed resident-led commission that can help the Mayor and Council make additional comments from the community. The Council regularly hears from transportation and enforcement and policy experts and has conducted research on and has educated itself on current topics and actively participates in the city's transportation and Vision Zero projects. The Commission also frequently collaborates with the Rockville Bicycle Advisory Committee and the Rockville Pedestrian Advocacy Committee, bringing forward consistent advice among the committees. The Commission welcomes the opportunity to respond directly from requests from the Mayor and Council and to explore issues in depth and provide key insight and opportunities. During the most recent past, the Commission has also participated in the city's Artist Selection Committee for the Beale Avenue Asphalt Art Project. We've also had a representative working as a member of the Community Advisory Committee for the Maryland 355 BRT, Bus Rapid Transit System, and has invited the Planning Department staff to meetings with us to help provide comments for master plans. As we approach our work, we have guiding principles for our framework as we review the topics. The slides above to help me direct what we're looking at, the different frames that we put up. equity has been a big one. The Commission recognizes that transportation equity as a built environment can support all people's travel needs, regardless of their mode of travel, and ensure that they are able to safely, conveniently, and directly meet their daily transportation needs. The Commission supports a network that provides equal opportunity and equal outcome for all modes. We attempt to invest and encourage the city to invest in transportation equity that will grant residents more freedom of choice regarding their options and allow for greater access across the city, especially in communities that have been historically neglected and are not as motor vehicle oriented. That's one of our big concerns. Furthermore, safety and attention to vulnerable roadway users. A safe transportation network reduces and ultimately eliminates crashes resulting in serious injuries and fatalities and increases perceived safety for everyone. The Commission explores transportation hazards for all modes and works to identify safety priorities and budget investments for the city improvements. Further understanding of that the people who walk, roll, and bicycle are more vulnerable in the roadway, and additional safety enhancements that specifically serve these roadway users are necessary. Next, accessibility. A comprehensive transportation network must provide access for roadway users of all abilities. This includes residents and visitors that use mobility devices, strollers, who may be older adults or maybe those with disabilities. Moreover, the transportation infrastructure itself must not obstruct the ability of people to reach their destinations. The Commission encourages the city to invest in significant resources in accessibility improvements that will enhance the equity for all residents and achieve the goals sought by the Americans with Disabilities Act. The transportation infrastructure for community. While transportation infrastructure provides mobility for residents and visitors, it sometimes creates barriers for communities. The Commission supports transportation infrastructure that not only helps facilitate economic and social activity, but also bridges communities together. Therefore, the Commission supports improving the existing Unity Bridge and building a Twin Brook pedestrian bicycle bridge. In terms of our future, next, the Commission seeks direction from the Rockville Mayor and Council. We are ready and we are educated. You have our commitment to help Rockville build an inclusive, equitable, and accessible transportation system for all users. Next. For your information, our meetings are held on Tuesdays each month. They're virtual and in person on occasion. I mean, usually there's always the virtual with the in-person. So virtual is always an option. All meetings are recorded. We always have a public forum. We sometimes have in-between meetings that work on special projects or work as a subcommittee. So we attempt to be productive on the issues that are current to your planning and your consideration. That's our strong interest. So we will be responsive. Just want to let you know that. Okay, is there a next? Questions and answers.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I can say that right before I got on council to where we are now has been dramatically transformative in terms of our city's efforts to move beyond just looking at transportation as cars only to really looking at it from the lens of all people who use our streets, our sidewalks, our bike lanes, and also thinking about people with different abilities who need to be able to traverse our city. So thank you very much for helping on that and helping to push us. I really appreciate the work of the Commission. I also know that we've been taking great strides to try to make sure that there's more collaboration between RPAC, RBAC, the Planning Commission, and the Transportation Mobility Commission in terms of people being able to see things and weigh in. So thank you for the extra reviews that you're doing, because I know there's a lot on your plates. And I'll also just note the collaboration across the county. So it's not just what's happening in the city, but what happens in the county and the state have an impact on all of us. I've always said we can do everything right, but if the partners' streets are not safe, it still won't be safe for our residents. So thank you for collaborating in those areas as well.
In response, I'd like to say that we do try to look around us, what's going on in our geographic area in particular. We would like to make, whenever possible, give you advice that is consistent with those other entities. I don't think that people are all aware of when they're in Rockville and when they're in the county, and the consistency really helps. The rules don't need to change, the textures and the streets and sidewalks for all users don't have to be that different. We want consistency, but we also want Rockville to be a shining star.
Thank you.
We want Rockville to have a plan for making all residents feel welcome and that they can live and work and be active in their city.
Thank you. And we'll hear our Vision Zero update on some of the progress this has made. I know everything from reducing speeds to increasing sidewalks. You've looked at equity across the city. One thing I wanted to ask before I turn it over to my colleagues are how you guys are involved in tracking responses on state road improvements. I know that's an area that I've been very interested in, just looking at the areas that have the most crashes and fatalities tend to be on state roads, and I know the mayor and council is always looking at how are we progressing there. So I just want to make sure that the Transportation Mobility Commission gets to see that as well, and the same for the sidewalk prioritization progress.
The topic of state-owned roads comes up virtually every meeting. And the concerns about the safety on those roads for both drivers and pedestrians is a constant topic. We've provided some input. We are hopeful that the city staff and the county staff are talking to each other. We don't know the results yet of those conversations. We're trying to get more understanding of what direction that is going. We would ask the new city manager to help us make progress on that. But it doesn't even stop there. It's also the state. We need the state talk. Those conversations are going. I'm encouraged by reports, but I don't have specifics. We don't, as a commission, don't have specifics yet. But there has to be an approach, and I think everybody, in my personal opinion, everybody has to have a piece of the commitment that it's going to take to fix the safety concerns on the streets and sidewalks of state roads. I don't think we can just wait for the state to come in and rescue us. I think we have to get ready to do some of the work ourselves and look for opportunities to pull in other entities to get the work done collaboratively. But I think the time has come to do this, because the discussions need to be over at some point. We need to do action.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, and thanks for your work on the American Disabilities Act in terms of weaving that into transportation mobility discussions. Really appreciate it. Colleagues, I'm looking for hands. I saw Dr. Miles, I see Councilmember Jackson, then Councilmember Valeri.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I echo your sentiments. I want to thank Ms. Kleiman and all the volunteers of the Traffic and Mobility Commission. I truly miss you all, miss serving as y'all's liaison. I also want to thank city staff for all the great work. But particularly our volunteers, you really pushed the city to do better. The only other thing I'll add to what the mayor has mentioned is I found great value, however difficult it was to schedule the walking city council meetings, kind of see how things look from other people's perspectives. I thought that was very helpful. Now, in there, thanks so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. First, thank you for that presentation. It was enlightening. It was impressive. I want to thank you also for taking a holistic approach. I mean, you're not just doing transportation mobility, but also looking at bicycling and pedestrian safety and the ADA, which I think is really important. So thank you for that. And if my colleagues are probably sick of hearing me say this, but, one of the things that I really dislike is when I talk to city staff or others, and they say, well, that's the way we've always done it. And I don't really like that answer because it isn't a good answer. It's a lazy answer. And one of the things before, the chair of the Transportation Commission was usually an engineer. And there's nothing wrong with engineers, but I think you taking the chairmanship or chairperson was good for the city of Rockville because it expanded the perspective, and it led to staff to take a look at transportation in a different way. And I think that's good. I think that kind of movement and growth is good for us and good for the city. I just want to ask a little bit about the ADA, if I could. You mentioned before the ADA, and do you find that it usually comes up like in spot discussions or when somebody has complaints, or is there like a broader plan to kind of infuse the ADA into everything that we do?
Well, from what I've observed in recent years, Rockville took its first step when they brought on an ADA coordinator. Unfortunately, that position was part-time. I think the mayor and council and the city manager need to look at a full-time. I think the work, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done here in Rockville. It's not going to be quick and easy. It's going to take some money. It's going to take a commitment. It might take some votes, and and I think it definitely is going to take some money. I find in particular that maybe certain things have gotten attention, and certain things have not gotten any attention at all. And that the fragments that got no attention are real obstacles. So I think that's why I think we need to take it to a new level, and not just do what the bare minimum is and follow the minimum standards. The minimum standards are an attempt to have a one-size-fits-all, and that's not the approach that Rockville normally would take. We start with, what does a situation require? What does this particular site require? There's a lot of variables, and all the answers are not in the regulation. Some of it is just at the meeting table where we talk about what's needed. So I think it's having a coordinator that is well trained and very competent in bringing people together. I think you'll have plans throughout the city that will do a better job than the minimum, and I think that's what you need to shoot for.
Now, well, thank you, and that's a really comprehensive answer. I would just say I took two things away. There's more than that, but just two things. The first is that we do need a full-time ADA coordinator. There's not one right now, not even a part-time one, and so we need to hire a full-time ADA coordinator. And that maybe we need to look at having an ADA plan to address some of these issues over time, rather than a spot, whenever somebody has a complaint, so that we're actually proactively working to make the city ADA compliant rather than just going along and whenever somebody has a complaint. So thank you for indulging me, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your time and your presentation.
Thank you. I know we will be asking some questions on Division 0, but I suspect the ADA question will come up again in terms of how we're tracking what we need to get done. So just a heads up to give some time to prep for that. Councilmember Valeri?
Thank you. And I'm trying to segment my questions since we are doing Division 0 separately. But I believe that what I'm going to ask and bring up is firmly within the Transportation Mobility Commission's purview. One, Councilmember Dr. Miles' loss is my gain as your liaison, and it has been an absolute joy. And I got to work with so many members of the Transportation Mobility Commission during my time with RPAC, the Pedestrian Advocacy Committee. And I really have enjoyed the ongoing collaboration. There's two things of note right now with regards to the commission and then how the city is implementing recommendations of the commission. So one is on, and this question may be for Chair Kleinman, or it may be for Mr. Barnett Woods. It's a jump ball. Anybody can take it. On the comprehensive transportation review, the CTR, where are we with that process? Because I feel that I know that it has been raised by the Transportation Mobility Commission, and it should be a priority for us because so much of what we're looking at could be a modernized version of traffic engineering. So I'll put a pin in that. And then the other issue is the right turn on red and looking at, oops, sorry, right turn on red.
Is it?
I'm sorry.
Okay, just put the
Dr.
remote on top of
Councilmember Sue,
the
Dr. Miles,
counter, please. Where the apples are. Thank you.
Dr. Miles, you're off. You're on that.
I don't know where the
Sorry.
I'll take some apples too. Councilman Valeria is trying to speak and we don't hear her. I know that was a brilliant statement you just made. I can't hear you still. Can we work on her audio?
Okay. Can anybody hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Someone keeps muting me. I'm going to take it personal. The right turn on red issue, I'm looking at that more closely, perhaps more seriously. That has made a huge impact in other jurisdictions. And then finally, I just want to say thank you again to both the amazing staff and the amazing volunteers who have put in so much passion into the commission, and we're very lucky to have the staff that we have. So I just want to flag those two things for now as items that we've heard. Input from the commission and are kind of outstanding, and I'd like to know where we stand on those.
Thank you.
Good evening. This is Brian Barnett Woods, Staff Liaison to Transportation Commission, but also the Vision Zero and Pedestrian and Bicycle Coordinator. So regarding the CTR, the Comprehensive Transportation Review, this is the document that development applicants use to prepare the transportation elements of their development applications. And it helps them identify how to track transportation adequacy as well as other on-site multimodal improvements for their development applications. The Transportation Mobility Commission last November, I think, had submitted a letter to the Mayor and Council. We were CC'd on that letter as well, and included a list of recommendations and considerations for updating the CTR, the Comprehensive Transportation Review, excuse me. City staff, we met last month, and we took our first pass at looking at what's in the Comprehensive Transportation Review currently. And we've started creating essentially a new document. What are the things we'd like to change? What are the items that are in the letter, and how can we help address those? We meet again, I don't have my calendar on me, but I want to say it's next month or early September to look at all of our comments and suggestions. And then from there, our plan is to create a second draft that we'll be able to share with the Transportation Mobility Commission to get their feedback as well. Regarding the right turn on red, Councilmember Villiers, I'll be able to share with you the memo that the Traffic and Transportation Division had put together regarding this issue. Staff had looked at it and studied what are the variables and the criteria for when right turn on red should and should not be considered. But I'll share that with you, and then we can go forward from there. I don't have the answer on hand.
Not a problem. I appreciate that. I recall seeing the memo, but I definitely want to see how we can utilize the findings of the memo and then maybe how we can perhaps revisit some of the findings. So I appreciate everything that you do. Thank you very much, Ms. Barnett Woods.
Thank you.
I'll just comment that our suggestions were broad and extensive in terms of the revisions to that document. And it will, I think, reap benefits to the whole city and the city's future if some of those, if not all of those improvements are made to the CTR. It's an old document. It really needs a new approach, a new framework, like we've framed for them.
I will note it is in writing that you will see that document for the Transportation Mobility Commission, and thank you for putting that in the report. I see Councilmember Van Grack and then Councilmember Fulton, and then Shaw.
Thank you. And thank you for the wonderful presentation. I know the commission and staff has worked extremely diligently in putting it together and the work that they've accomplished. So thank you all. I also want to echo what Councilmember Jackson said and Ms. Kleiman said. I would agree, we really do need an ADA coordinator. There's been numerous issues, and I think transportation mobility is just one of them. And so I think this entire mayor and council really is forward with that. So hopefully we can get that done, because I think it's something that we all want to focus on. I also want to address that the presentation was fantastic, and there's clearly areas of the city that we need to do a better job on. I would encourage the commission and as members of the commission, Ms. Kleiman knows, the more information that we can get and staff can get prior to the budgeting season, we can get more information with regard to potentially have capital improvement projects that can increase it. So I'd encourage everybody who's listening to this meeting, members of the commission, the more you can put that information in there, the more staff knows about it and the mayor and council knows about it, the more we can properly address it. But again, thanks to the whole commission for the fantastic presentation. I know staff had a lot to do with this, so thanks, Mr. Barnett Woods and staff for helping along with that.
Thank you. Councilmember Fulton.
Obviously echoing my colleagues, amazing work. I mean, when I look at the amount of the meetings, your principles, the fact that you hold an open forum at all of your meetings, there's a lot we can learn from that. So thanks for all the work at the transportation. But I agree with all my colleagues on obviously our commitment to the ADA. We talked about it last week. I look forward to the Vision Zero presentation. I believe in multimodal accessibility and safety, obviously and wholeheartedly. And also, so I'm going to take a slightly uncharacteristic tack and ask about maybe one other area that I think falls under the commission that I'm wondering if you've had any thoughts on or plans to. And it's, I'll say motorized connectivity. We get some questions sometimes about connections to the senior center, where there's some difficulty in getting from place A to place B that could be easier and things like that. Whether in individual cars or if there's a way to get public transit to help things get to connect. Do you have any thoughts on the future of connectivity as distinct from accessibility, equity, and safety, all of which are more important? But I did want to ask about that issue as well.
I'll start by saying we've had a lot of discussions. We haven't come out with any final recommendations, but with your encouragement, we'll work on that, because we've worked on the subject amongst other subjects, but it comes up all the time that it might be good. This situation might be good for cars, but it's not good for walkers. This one might be good for walkers, but it's not good for buses. So there's a lot of disconnect. It just reflects that different systems were designed separate from each other. I happen to be a frequent bus user, and I find it very frustrating to get from the bus stop to the storefront, because it's not safe to do it. Because the storefronts have parking lots, and for some reason or other, the developer of the property thought everybody was coming by a vehicle and not from the bus stop. And I mean, another thing is crossing the highway, Rockville Pike in particular, where a lot of the businesses are, if you get off a bus on one side of the highway, you absolutely must cross the highway to get the bus back home. And are there enough safe ways to cross? And is it really safe? And is it really accessible? And I think there's a lot of those dots on the map that talk about crashes in some of the sites I'm talking about. There's a lot to look at. I think Vision Zero has a lot of recommendations, but our commission has them too. I will like to point out that all our letters that we've written in the last several years are in your packet. I will also want to say that the names of our commission members are listed. I've had a great commission to work with. They have great ideas. They do their homework and bring it in, and we digest it. And we've had a lot of city staff come and teach us, and that's been terrific. So it's been a great process. Is what we have a couple vacancies. I'm actively recruiting for the. So if you're interested in these kind of topics and these kind of discussions and doing some research on some of these problem-solving methods, I would appreciate some help.
Thank you so much. I will just say thank you to the entire commission. I did want to, since you asked on what we could talk about, and I see Councilman, I'll go to Councilman Shaw next. I looked at page 80, has the list of some of the things that we were looking at from an SHA perspective, State Highway Administration, in terms of what has been completed. Would love your perspective on, is that enough? What else? Because you mentioned State Highway, and they are, unfortunately, thought of as highways, but now we're putting housing, and we need people go to stores and there are bus shelters by them. And one of the topics I've had a big concern about is sometimes the bus shelters in mid-block, or the stretch is too long to cross. So would love to get your look at a future commission meeting on that State Highway Administration work list, if you will, and see what else we can add there.
Okay, we'll get started. Thank you.
Councilmember Shaw.
I also want to echo my colleagues and thank you, Ms. Kleinman, as well as the commission and staff and the volunteers. My question / concern that the commission raised in particular was midway crossing or mid-block crossings, especially in Rockville Town Center. That's where I live, and I see that often. I'm often cringing when I see that. Can you share some details on that?
I would say that's one of the things that the commission needs to work closely with the Pedestrian Advocacy Committee.
Okay.
And I think we've started that topic, but there's not necessarily consensus yet, because there's a lot of possible answers. So we'll continue that work too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to the entire commission, and I know you'll be sticking around for our Vision Zero report, but no pressure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Valeri, did you have your hands up again? Sorry.
I did. I just wanted to make a quick point. I just want to co-sign everything that Madam Mayor said regarding placement of buses. Also, to not forget, it's not only 355 where we have these issues, but it is also 586, more commonly called Veers Mill Road, and that's the same with the BRT as well. We have an opportunity with both of those state highways where there are quite a few people who live on both of those roads to be able to make it safer. Unfortunately, several of the pedestrian deaths along 355 occurred around mid-block crossings that were actually closer to the entrance of their multifamily buildings. So it's something I think that we need to look at. I also wanted to put a pin in something distressing that I've personally seen more frequently right now, and that is individuals with mopeds and higher CC motorized vehicles and just a little bird scooter who are utilizing pedestrian and bicycle paths through Rockville's parks. In particular, my family and I were almost run over by one walking our dogs last week. So I think that there is some challenges in the coordination between different kinds of modes of transportation. And I think that's important to look at, but I definitely agree on prioritizing how we're looking at bus stops and where the natural place for a bus stop would be, as opposed to just working with where it is right now. I think that contributes a lot to safety.
Thank you. Well, that's a really nice segue to what we have been doing in terms of our Vision Zero progress update. As folks may know, we have done the comprehensive plan that has a transportation element. We have done before that, the Bikeway Master Plan, a Vision Zero plan, and the pedestrian plan. I know this Vision Zero update will include some progress areas for those items as we look at them holistically. So I welcome, again, Brian Barnett Woods. I was trying to buy you some time, Mr. Woods.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good evening again. We're here to discuss the Vision Zero Action Plan, the Bikeway Master Plan, and the Pedestrian Master Plan, the progress update. I am Brian Barnett Woods, the city's Vision Zero Coordinator and Bike Ped Coordinator. I'm part of the Traffic and Transportation Division in Public Works. I'm joined here today by Ahmed Al-Shafi, Division Chief, and Craig Simino, Public Works Director. So here's a quick agenda for tonight's discussion. We'll discuss the Vision Zero Action Plan, the pedestrian and bicycle master plans. We'll talk a little bit about engagement, some funding issues, and then we'll spend most of the time talking about projects and things we've been working on recently. So just a quick background on the Vision Zero plan. It was adopted in the summer of 2020. Vision Zero is an overarching transportation safety plan. The goal is to eliminate all serious injury and fatal crashes. We recognize this is a very ambitious goal, but it's definitely one that is worth this city striving for, and we're happy to be part of making this achievement. Vision Zero is multimodal. It's for people driving, walking, rolling, bicycling, and using transit. And it's not just Public Works who's working on this. We collaborate with the Rockville City Police Department, the Department of Recreation and Parks, the Public Information Office, the county, the state, as many people who will collaborate and listen to us. Vision Zero is broken down into 30 different action items. An action item is essentially a task that's been incorporated into our work program. Some are really discrete tasks and have been completed. So for instance, one of them is to hire a Vision Zero coordinator, or to update the city's vehicle fleet procurement policy, which were pretty discrete and have been completed. Other tasks are ongoing and more long-term, so accelerating the city's sidewalk construction program, improving signalized and unsignalized crossings. These are longer-term projects that we continually work toward. All of the action items are organized into what we call action categories, but there's engineering, enforcement, education, and policy. The Pedestrian Master Plan is the most recent plan for the city. It was adopted last year. It outlines a plan for improving the walking and rolling environment in Rockville. It recognizes that pedestrian travel has a myriad of benefits for the city, and these include safety, health, economic benefits, environmental benefits, community benefits, it goes on. The plan has four main goals. First, ensuring accessibility. We want to make sure that all places are accessible to everyone in Rockville, regardless of their ability. Advancing equity, and this is transportation equity, which it means it doesn't matter what mode is being used to get somewhere. Everyone should be able to reach their destination safely, directly, and conveniently. Increasing walking and rolling, kind of straightforward and short, to increase pedestrian travel in the city. And institutionalized walking and rolling. We work to incorporate and recognize pedestrian travel in all transportation projects and policies that we work on. Similar to the Vision Zero master plan, the Pedestrian Master Plan is organized by action items. These are, again, components of the city's work program. A lot of them are my work program as well. The action items are also organized into 10 categories. I won't go through them all, but they include things like policy updates, collaborating with the county and the state, looking at sidewalks and sidewalk maintenance, crosswalks, pedestrian supportive land uses, things like this. We've also prepared an implementation strategy to help schedule how we'll carry out all of these action items, and I believe it's going to be included in the next monthly report for you. The last plan is the Bikeway Master Plan. This plan was adopted in 2017. It's also kind of the next plan that's up, at least for my work program, for an update in the next few years. This plan includes recommended bicycle facilities and the streets where they'd be located on. So where do we want to see bike lanes or sharrows? It also includes general policy positions for the city. We seek to improve multimodal travel. We seek to improve safety for all bicyclists. We want to have better metrics for tracking bicycling in the city, things like that. And lastly, while we're still on this slide, in 2022, the city of Rockville was awarded a bronze designation as a bicycle-friendly community by the League of American Bicyclists. So you can see the sign on the picture. And so we're very proud of that and hope to be silver the next time we go for it. This here is a table that shows kind of the progress on all of the bicycle facility types. So the bike lanes, shared roadways, things like that. Overall, we've completed just under 27% of the plan. We've completed about 40% of the shared roadways. And we're regularly making efforts to advance the designated bicycling facilities. So these are things like the bike lanes, shared use paths, and cycle tracks. These facilities are better for overall bicycling. They also encourage more bicycling use, and they improve safety for all modes and where they are. However, they do require much more time and effort for evaluation and assessment before they can be implemented. And a lot of the work that we're doing now is kind of in that stage of let's evaluate how this bike lane would work in this city. During the last Vision Zero presentation, there were some questions about outreach, so I just wanted to hit on those. For your information and for actually everyone's information who may be in neighborhood groups or civic associations, we welcome the opportunity to come and speak at your meetings. And so please feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to attend a meeting and provide a multimodal or a Vision Zero presentation about our safety programs. Since we've last met, we attended meetings with the East Rockville Civic Association, the Twin Brook Community Association, Lincoln Park Civic Association, Main Street Rockville, and we also met with residents from the Rockville Town Center, even though there isn't a formal civic association the way other communities have. This picture here is from Main Street Rockville, where we gave a pedestrian safety presentation, and then afterwards we put it into practice, and we did a pedestrian safety walk through the town center with residents and staff. Additionally, to in-person meetings, we also work with the Public Information Office, and they've been a great support for us to have materials that are online and in print. Over the past 6 months, we've had 84 posts regarding Vision Zero safety tips for all modes, people walking, rolling, bicycling, driving. There's also been 5 Rockville Reports articles, and then there's 2 pages on the city websites. One is kind of a general Vision Zero page, and then the other has specific Vision Zero projects. We're also working right now with the Public Information Office to update these pages as part of their bigger website update project. But one of the things that was mentioned to me last week that I'm pretty excited about is the use of like a graphic tag that we can identify any project if it's part of the Vision Zero program. I guess they're doing something similar with climate action, so I think that'll be a good way to identify transportation projects. Oh, this is part of the Vision Zero program. So I think it'll be cool. Additionally, there are several capital improvement program projects, or CIPs, in our annual budget. There's one specifically for pedestrian bicycle safety. There's another one for sidewalks. And then we have a few CIPs that are for specific projects like the Twin Brook Pedestrian Bridge or the Scott Veers Drive Shared Use Path. In addition to what's in the annual budget, we try and leverage our resources by getting external grants. And so right now, there are 13 projects that are either recently completed or ongoing that are funded by grants or in part by grants. And in total, that's over $2.6 million, which I think is pretty good. We're going to continue to seek more external funding for this fiscal year and next fiscal year moving forward, and so we hope to grow that. To grow that number. All right, so now we're going to talk about projects. all of the projects can be, some are pedestrian projects, some are bicycle projects, and some are Vision Zero projects, but they kind of overlap. And so we'll talk about them together. During the last meeting, one of the council members had asked about where are Vision Zero projects built in the city. So here's a map. In your packet, there's this map with the legend attached to it. But to give you a rough breakdown, the blue lines are where we've had speed limit reductions. The pink lines are where we're doing sidewalk gap feasibility studies or designs. The green lines are where we've done complete streets improvements or studies, and that includes things like bicycle facilities, traffic calming, or multimodal improvements, and studies as well. The orange dots are intersections with leading pedestrian intervals, and that's when the pedestrian light signal turns on a few seconds before the green light, so that pedestrians have an opportunity to establish more presence in the crosswalk, and it's a safety improvement. The red dots are part of the Vision Zero intersection safety audits, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Those are the ones that have been completed. The blue ones are ongoing. The yellow dots are also safety audits that have been initiated, but these are the ones we're doing through the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant that we received. And so it's been initiated, but this project hasn't started yet. If we break out the city into three portions, we can see that there are 56 projects that are east of Maryland 355, which is Rockville Pike, Hungerford Drive, Frederick Road. There are 48 projects that are in between Maryland 355 and I-270, and there are 8 projects that are west of Interstate 270. And so that's kind of where they are. So for sidewalk projects, through our Vision Zero program, we have a process, and this is also included in the pedestrian master plan, where we look at the sidewalk gaps, which are roadway segments where there are missing sidewalks, to evaluate. And we use our existing sidewalk prioritization policy to help identify those gaps. But we evaluate the feasibility of constructing them. Ones that are feasible, we want to advance those to design. And then in the next year, we look at construction. So the Group 1 sidewalks, which were evaluated last year, are currently under design, are these 4 here: Frederick Avenue, Highland, Nelson Street, and Monroe Street. I would stress one caveat. Monroe Street, we have it under design right now, but it is scheduled to be under construction next month. So we're moving forward there. The Group 2, the ones that are being studied right now, is this second list: Carr Avenue, which is near Beale Elementary School, Charles Street, Croydon Street, Gale Avenue, and Woodland Road. And those are the ones that are being studied currently. And then the ones that are deemed feasible will move on to design. In addition to the ones that are through our Vision Zero program, we also have a grant from the Transportation Alternatives Program, which is a federal grant that is also doing essentially the same thing, evaluating sidewalk gaps, but these are specific to the Twin Brook neighborhood. And so the gaps that we're looking at are the ones listed here: Crawford Drive, Halsey Road, Midway Avenue, Wade Avenue, a different section of Crawford Drive, and a different section of LeMay Road. This project is still ongoing, but we anticipate moving the top 5 of those sidewalks to a design phase. And we do not anticipate moving the second 2 ones, the Crawford Drive between Ardennes and Atlantic and LeMay Road, to design. In addition to the ones that are Twin Brook specific, the ones from our Vision Zero program, we're also looking at making a sidewalk on Potomac Valley Road, which is currently in design, and then Virginia Avenue, which is initiated. And this one was also submitted to us via a resident petition. And so if any residents are interested, there's a petition process online. And if you and your neighbors want a sidewalk, please let us know, and then we can look into the process of making that happen. Another project we're working on is crosswalk guidelines. This is an action item in the pedestrian master plan. It was also something that before the pedestrian master plan was a thing, was recommended by the Rockville Pedestrian Advocacy Committee. And these guidelines are to help the city respond to public requests for marked crosswalks. They're a little bit different. I think they do a better job kind of addressing the built environment surrounding where a crosswalk request is. And so once these are approved moving forward, we'll be able to reference this document and identify where to put in marked crosswalks. And so we look forward to that happening as well. Intersection audits. This is very similar to the sidewalk program where we identify intersections based on the number of crashes that have had injuries or serious injuries and fatalities. And we look at see what improvements could be done. So the round 1 intersection audits, we studied these last year, and now we are just about finished with all of the improvements. I think we still need to add pavement markings to the intersection of Edmondson Drive and Lewis Avenue, which is on the list of pavement program. And then I believe the signal heads for the East Goody Drive and Taft Court intersection also need to be procured and installed. But these are mostly complete, so that's great. The next round that we're doing now, there are 3 intersections on West Goody Drive at Gaither Road, Picard Drive, and Research Boulevard. And then we're also looking at East Jefferson Street and Rollins Avenue, and then East Goody Drive and Rockville Drive. The studies have been completed, and we're now looking to see about making improvements, and we anticipate that we'll be able to make these improvements over the next year. Let's see, sorry. Since our last meeting, there was some discussion about reducing speed limits, and so city staff had prepared a study that looked at roadways in the city that had posted speed limits over 40 miles an hour. And then after completing the study, and then then acting city manager by policy determined that all the segments that were studied would have speed limits reduced to 35 miles per hour. And in doing so now, there is no city street in Rockville that has a posted limit over 35. So the few segments that were on East Goody Drive, West Goody Drive, and Wooten Parkway that were 40 miles per hour are now 35 miles per hour. So we were happy to see that happen. Martin's Lane. This is a bicycle facility project where we did a study and then some design. Ultimately, the study's nearly complete, and we've prepared a near-term improvement, which is designated bicycle lanes and shared roadway markings, and then a longer-term plan to do an off-street shared use path. This project was funded partially by a Maryland Bikeways grant, and we're looking forward to seeing it move ahead. Similar to the Martins Lane project, and through the Maryland Bikeways program, through grant funding, we're going to do a bicycle lane or facility feasibility study for Halpine Road and East Jefferson Street. And this would go from, on East Jefferson Street between Rollins Avenue and Congressional Lane, and then on Halpine Road between East Jefferson Street and Rockville Pike or Maryland 355. And so the purpose of this study is to look at how could we improve bicycle access and bicycle use, and whether we could fit in bicycle lanes or separated lanes or shared use paths. We'd also reach out to the community to get their input as well, and then prepare designs for a preferred alternative. Excuse me. We recently completed a complete street study on Manakee Street, and this went from the full extent of the road, so all the way from West Montgomery Avenue, I guess in the south, all the way to Hungerford Drive, which would be north but also east. Thank you. And the study looked at how can we improve this roadway for all types of travel, people walking, rolling, bicycling, and driving. And really, how do we reduce speeding, make sure that more people, more motorists are able to yield to pedestrians, and make sure that the perceived comfort of everyone using the road is a little bit higher. And so they've prepared several recommendations. We've actually gone forth, and here's the pictures at Manakee Street and Smallwood Road. One of the comments we received was that many motorists will park on the crosswalk, especially during the weekend. And so by putting in pavement markings and adding new signage, this kind of clearly designates, like, this area is not for parking, so don't park here. And this helps pedestrians be more visible when they're crossing the street. Similar to that Manakee Street project, we're about to begin one on Congressional Lane, and this goes from, Rockville Pike, so Maryland 355, all the way to Rollins Avenue. And the purpose of the study is to do the same thing. How do we make this better for everyone who's walking, rolling, bicycling, using transit, and driving? Is there a way to make it more comfortable for everyone? What types of facilities can be added? And how will that impact the traffic operations of the roadway? Additionally, we'll also reach out to the public to get their thoughts and recommendations and comments. So we look forward to advancing this study as well. Beale Avenue, there was some discussion earlier today about the asphalt art project. And so the Public Works half of this is to redesign portions of Beale Avenue between 355 and North Washington Street to provide more space for separated bicycle lanes with vertical separation, more on-street parking and loading, reduce the width that people would cross the street if they're pedestrians, so you're not crossing 4 lanes of traffic, but then also connection to the asphalt art project, making sure that there is space to apply that asphalt art. So that's an important part of that. But we have received the plans. We expect when the roadway is repaved later this fall, we'll be able to put in the new striping, and then quickly after that, the art will be able to be added. So I think it'll be a nice touch for the city, and I look forward to it. The Twin Brook pedestrian and bicycle bridge. You may recall last year the city received a neighborhood access and equity grant. This is in connection to the Reconnecting Communities program, but they are separate grants for a in-depth feasibility study of a connection for pedestrians and bicyclists crossing those railroad tracks in the Twin Brook neighborhood. And so the study is going to look at multiple locations, identify benefit cost analysis of each of those locations, extensive outreach with the community, constructability, whether having where it is proposed, like, oh, can we actually construct this in a reasonable cost? And so right now we are coordinating with Federal Highways, or FHWA, to put together our agreement for the grant. We can't do any work on it until this agreement is signed. And so we sent them our draft. They'll send us their comments. We'll go back and forth. But then that agreement will be shared with this mayor and council before moving forward with the project. But we're also pretty excited for this one as well. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit about bike share. During our last meeting, there were opportunities and questions on whether we would be able to move a bike share station from somewhere in Rockville to somewhere in the southern part of Rockville. Since then, we actually learned a couple weeks ago, we received a grant from the Maryland Department of Transportation Emissions Reduction Program to purchase 4 bike share stations and then pay for their maintenance for a few years in the Twin Brook area. And so that's really great, and we're looking forward to that. We haven't received the formal award from MDOT, but we did receive the approval from the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments Transportation Planning Board. And so we are moving forward. We expect this project to begin in the spring of next year. And I think, there's more. Less good news. The county did choose to remove 4 stations that are in the city of Rockville. They're actually removing 10 stations that are part of what they call the Shady Grove corridor. And it does include 4 in the city. Their rationale behind moving will be because of low ridership and then the rising maintenance cost. But the removal of those 4 and the award of the new 4 are coincidental. It's unrelated. But I guess it all evens out in the end. And I think with that, I'm happy to answer questions, have more discussion. I may not have the answers for everything, which point I'll promise to follow up and get back to you, and I'll answer what I can. Thank you.
Thank you. I will just say thank you for all the work you're doing. I notice Director Craig Semino's in the room. I also want to acknowledge Imad Al-Sharifi. I know there's a huge team behind all this work, and really appreciate all the work that you, Brian, are doing as well. Again, light years. I remember when I first got on, I asked a question, I think in 2020, what percent our bike lane plan was complete, and we had only done 8% by then. And I really appreciate the work to do the tracking, as well as to present to mayor and council, because I think it holds us accountable. We can't just make plans, we have to drive action to improve safety for all. So thank you. I think you've taken this dashboard to another level. And it's a model for many other plans that we have. So I just wanted to acknowledge and appreciate the tracking and the follow through. So I'll start there. I also just wanted to really appreciate, I think, the additional support and work to improve public safety and equity, areas that had not traditionally gotten the same level of attention to support equity across the city is noticeable. And then the use of data to help inform where projects go is fantastic, and again, another model for the city. So want to just acknowledge that at the top. I have many more questions and comments, but I just really appreciate the work that's done here. It's been great. I'm wondering for my colleagues, because there's a lot to talk about in this plan. I know that we're not going to get to it all tonight, and we can send some questions as well. But if we could maybe move from, talk about enforcement, education, outreach, and then engineering, take it into 3 buckets just so that we can organize our conversation. I have a couple things on enforcement, and then I know Councilmember Fulton and Councilmember Jackson, I know everyone will have their hands up. I'm seeing some online as well. I see you. But quick on enforcement, and then I'll move to my colleagues to talk about enforcement. I was surprised to see that the goal for the automated enforcement is noted as 100% on page 87. During the budgeting process, as well as previous Vision Zero, I know that we were looking at seeing where else we might need automated enforcement. So to me, that's maybe 100 perhaps, but maybe we need to look at where else it's needed. So I just wanted to note that I don't think that's quite done yet. Because I know, as we talked about, even in the transportation mobility, the conversations we need to have with the state in some areas that we might need that, and then other parts of the city where we're seeing crashes and near misses. So if we could look at that. I do want to comment on the noise abatement and noise cameras. I will talk under old new business, but I think we should send a note to the county because there's very, very few that they get. I think there are 3 across the entire county. Rockville was instrumental in getting that legislation passed. I hope that we can send a letter to advocate that one of those, at least one, get put in Rockville. And then the last piece is just SHA. I appreciate all the work that's been going on to coordinate with the State Highway Administration. I know that they're having a culture shift as well in terms of moving from the old way of thinking to Vision Zero way of thinking. And I appreciate all the work that you're doing to follow up with them. I know much more is needed. But that's another one where on the enforcement side, perhaps there needs to be a look at lights there, and what other areas we need to do to improve the State Highway Administration's enforcement. All right, so I saw Councilmember Fulton, and then I'll move to Councilmember Jackson, and then I see Valeri, Miles, Van Grack.
Thank you. I'm always in favor of organization, but I just have 3 questions, and I'm not sure what buckets they fit in, so I'll just go. I will echo the mayor. Thank you so much. Both the responsiveness and the proactiveness of this report are phenomenal. Like, we asked questions at the last meeting, they're addressed in this one, so we don't have to ask them again. It's really fantastic. So thank you for that. That being said, there are three very discrete things that I did want to just make sure I understood. I think you answered the last one. We're net zero on bike share stations. Is that gain 4, lose 4? You win some, you lose some. Is that where we are on that? Okay.
Sure. So at this point, we have 4 fewer bike share stations than we did 6 months ago.
Okay.
But we've received funding in a grant to obtain 4 more stations. So we'll be net zero, though right now we are 4 fewer.
Okay. And then I really try to not have hyper-local specific issues, but on the Carr Avenue sidewalk, I just have this one. Do you know where, I know it's in study, but is it, there'll be a conclusion of that study, and then if it's determined feasible, it'll go to design next year. Is that?
Yeah, so I just confirmed. So we will move forward with the design of the Carr Avenue sidewalk.
We are moving forward with the design for next year. Yes. Okay. And then the design for a year, and then construction the year after. Okay. And then on the Twinbrook pedestrian bridge, I understand everything you said about where we stand on the grant, except the timeline. So what is the timeline on that study, either actually kicking off or concluding?
Sure. So I will say this with a caveat because I do not know how long Federal Highways will take with our grant agreement. But we anticipate starting the procurement process to get the consulting team probably in the spring, assuming we can get through everything with the agreement in the fall. And so the study itself will likely take 2 years. That's kind of how we've scheduled it out in the application. I think that's conservative, but I also don't want to say, oh, we'll be done in 6 months, because it's gonna take more than that. There's a lot of elements in this study, and we're going in really depth, on all 4 options that are being looked at to make sure that we're able to have the right information, the right details to have a preferred alternative that we can advance to something that would be competitive for a construction grant, that sort of thing.
I appreciate that. I mean, we should take as long as it takes to get it right. It's a big, important thing, but it's important for us and the community to know realistic expectations on when we actually see something there. So again, thank you so much for everything. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And just to follow up, because I know that a lot of us are interested in the Twinbrook pedestrian bridge. I saw Councilman Valeri's head moving as soon as you mentioned the bridge. But that is design, and part of it is looking at which of the options in terms of location it would be and cost planning. And then we have to look at applying for grants and finding the funding because it will be multi-million.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so the bridge itself or any crossing will likely be very expensive. And so we will be seeking external sources of funding to pay for that. But to get to a point where we'd have a really competitive project, we will need to look at all of the options in detail to make sure we're able to provide the best project that we can.
And I'll just note, as we look at that, we should always look at the NOFOs that are available because NOFO is a notice of funding agreement. Sometimes they have an ending, and I know that depending on priorities at the national level, that may impact what is federally funded. So.
Yeah, we are seeking to make sure that we are at a phase, we're completed enough with the study that we can use all that information for the final round, at least of this version, for reconnecting communities. That's the strategy.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I will put my questions in writing, so I won't take our time tonight. I know many of my colleagues have a lot of questions. The one thing I want to say is thank you for this comprehensive report and for all the work that you and the volunteers and city staff do to actually make Vision Zero a reality. We're not there yet, but the hope is we're going to be there in the coming years because of work that you do and the reports and all the work that the staff and volunteers do. I guess my question is really for this body, what can we do? What are some of the low-hanging fruit that we can help you with to make sure that Vision Zero becomes a reality?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. This is obviously not an easy question to answer, but honestly, you have done so far so good, which is we have, in the last 3 years or so, we did the Vision Zero adoption and the pedestrian master plan adoption. So those kind of set us the steps or the guidelines for staff what to do. And as you see following this, you see all the number of projects we are working on, all kinds of things, intersections, sidewalks, bike shares, all of this. We are also working with the state. I want to add a couple things. I know it was mentioned earlier about how we are working with the state and how we track things. We actually have a list that we meet with the state every 3 months, and we have a list of 10 to 15 items. And every time we go to this meeting, we go through all of them. 5 or 6 are completed, 9 or 10 are not. So that's how we track. The state actually work with us well. The issue is that they are slow, and they are slow because it's a big agency, and a group of people design something or review something, and then they send recommendation to a different group, and then a different group review it again, and then send it to somebody else. So it can take a year or 2. And as you know, the Beers Mill speed reduction took several years. We still fight with them on the last road that we want to reduce speed limit, which is Norbeck 28. It's 40 still. We want it to be 35 to match Beers Mill. So this might be the point that we would want the mayor and council to help with at some point. Again, we work with them, but they're slow, but sometime maybe that would be the area where you can help us with at this level. But at our staff level at this point, we have all the policies that we have all the guidelines, we have the, the plan of what we need to do in the next few months or even few years. Every year we'll come to you to tell you how much money we have and how much more money we need to be able to continue this program. So really at this point, we're not asking for anything. We have a great group of people in different commission and committees to work with. The residents do not leave us alone. They are on us every day pretty much. So we get help from everybody to go to the next step. So we thank you for that.
Thank you very much. I'll note at the Maryland Municipal League meeting, there was a secretary roundtable, and we had a chance to meet with Secretary of SHA, and your list was very helpful because we were able to say, thanks for your help on this. We still need this. And so that helps to keep everything prioritized in the city, and we appreciate the transparency information you're arming us with to help. Councilmember Valeri.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to keep mine short and sweet because I could probably keep this going for at least another hour, but I won't do that to anybody. I will say, just to put a pin in it, the struggle with SHA, again, literally, it is literally a life and death matter when 9 out of 10 of our deadliest, most dangerous intersections are SHA maintained. So, all of our work on that is very much needed. And we see that is our biggest struggle because we're able to do a lot more stuff more quickly on city maintained roads. So going back to, and I appreciate the kind of breakdown geographically of where projects are coming in. I wanted to ask one question and then ask for a little, maybe a short explanation. Could you share, I know I'm familiar with it, could you share how complete streets is defined and what we do when we do a complete streets study? Because I think that that encapsulates a lot of the other things that you listed out, like LPIs, like intersection audits, and so forth. So I want to make sure that we are looking at all of this equitably. And what I'm seeing is, frankly, west of 270 definitely needs more attention, and we need to do more work over there because the amount of Vision Zero related projects, if everything's great, then everything's great. That's awesome. But I want to make sure that that we are treating all neighborhoods equitably, and still keeping in mind that complete streets might cover some of those other projects. So that's kind of my long-winded but short question for you.
Sure. I will do my best, and I might need to follow up. So when we look at complete streets, we kind of define them as roadways that provide facilities for all types of travel modes. So it's a street that provides space for people walking and rolling. It provides space for people bicycling, whether that is a bicycle lane or a shared roadway or a shared use path. It provides space for people using transit to make sure that if there's a bus stop there and there's sidewalks to that bus stop, it provides space for people driving. And so complete kind of encapsulates all roadway users are able to use this space. When we have complete street studies, like the one we had on Manatee Street that recently completed and the one that we're about to begin on Congressional Lane, what we're looking for and kind of what we direct the project team is taking a look at the street as a blank slate, what improvements can be made to improve the way that people navigate these streets, and what can we do to make it a safer and more comfortable experience. And so the Manatee Street one, which you just completed, some of the recommendations were, we should update and add crosswalks at this intersection. We should put a raised crossing at Carr Avenue, although now I'm thinking it might be a block north, so please don't quote me on that one. But how can we put those in? But we also looked at, here's where the circle is, and people kind of come off that circle going a little bit faster. Can we put in a refuge median, or can we put in a median at that entrance so that motorists will take that turn and take the circle at a more responsible speed and within the posted speed limit? And so we're looking at how can we make these improvements for all modes to make sure that we're increasing safety for everyone who's using that roadway. As far as where we have projects and whether geographically we're looking at make sure everything's accounted for, I think even before we look at something geographically, we look at where we have the most crashes and the most issues that have been raised, whether it's residents who submit a report of concern to us through the online portal, or they submit me or IMED or anyone on our team an email that says, hey, I was walking here, or hey, I was driving here, like there's something wrong, we need to fix it. We look at those issues first. And a lot of the roadways that have more safety concerns tend to be ones that were built in eras where not all modes were taken into consideration. And so I think that often is reflected in where our projects are today, where we're seeing more projects in places where sidewalks weren't built on both sides of the street, for instance, or where intersection improvements weren't really considered, 50 years ago, maybe when the intersection was built, because it was only thought to be automobiles using that intersection. And so that might help some of it, but that doesn't mean that we're not thinking about areas west of I-270. And we've also put in, I think we talked about it during our last Vision Zero presentation, a pedestrian refuge island at, Wooten and Dundee, which is also near that elementary school, because we receive many requests and many concerns about motorists not yielding to pedestrians there. And so we're thinking about those places too.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you again to yourself and everybody on the team. That it's just, Vision Zero is elusive, but we're going to continue to support all the staff working to make it a reality. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll defer to my colleagues in terms of some of the points they raised in terms of implementation, enforcement, but just to say, in addition to thank you as they have for your work and working with all the volunteers who volunteered on the boards and commissions to that end. I just want to make a few points based on the presentation and info in the agenda book. I really like that you all identified where their projects are occurring geographically, which certainly can help us in terms of meeting some of our goals with regard to equity. So thanks for that. I'm a big advocate, 5+ years of trying to get some of these speed limits reduced. So I thank you all for that as well. Making things consistent, not only with all streets being kept at 35, it's also consistent with, I believe, the majority, if not all, the stretches of Rockville Pike that run through Rockville are no higher than 35 either. So I think there's a fair degree of consistency there. Thank you all for that. I want to send you big congrats on the $2.6 million in grant funding that you all have raised. It's awesome. And thanks again for the bike share stations update. I know it's something we raised during the budget hearings. It sounds like we are netting zero, but we are moving them to places where hopefully, or they will be established in places where hopefully there hasn't been in the past, particularly in the Twin Brook neighborhood. With that, I'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Van Grack and then Councilmember Shaw.
First and foremost, I'm going to echo my colleagues in saying thank you to staff. Vision Zero, while it is absolutely a lofty goal, is absolutely critical, and you're making tremendous progress on that. So kudos and appreciation. But I do want to follow up. I'm going to submit later. I have some specific intersection follow-ups and things that I don't think we need to go to in the meeting, but I do want to follow up similar to what Councilmember Valeri said. While I understand that we're clearly going to be focusing on areas that might be older intersections, it is quite striking to see the areas west of 270 and that there's no sidewalk issues, because I know we've got some sidewalk issues, but I do want to focus on the fact that you've got 2 street areas west of 270, Research Boulevard and the Veers-Scott connection area, that I know there have been significant pedestrian and bicyclist accidents, but I didn't see an update anywhere in your presentation on those 2 areas. Do you have any updates? Are we making progress, or is that still just even pre-study phase on those 2 segments?
Sure. So let's see, with the Scott Veers Drive shared use path project, the feasibility study for this project was completed, I think, December of last year. And then we used the information from that to apply for a Transportation Alternatives Program grant, which we were awarded to do the 100% or the complete engineering design for the shared use path. That project hasn't started yet, but it will start likely in the fall or spring. And so we'll move forward designing that shared use path. For Research Boulevard, we submitted a shared use path feasibility study and design to the Maryland Department of Transportation for their Maryland Bikeways program. And so we'll see moving forward whether we receive that or not, but that one's still in the pre-study phase.
Now, if we don't get the grant money to it, is it still something we'd be considering doing as like a CIP within our budget?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. I'll follow up with some of my specific intersection questions, but thanks so much for pressing and making sure this is a priority for the city.
Of course.
Thank you. Councilmember Shaw.
I also want to echo my colleagues and thank you, and thank the staff. I noticed from the presentation that a lot of the public engagement is heavily dependent on outreach to neighborhood associations, as well as social media, the website. And I was wondering if you had any ideas or ways to reach other folks outside of folks that are not a part of associations or organizations in the future.
Sure, great question. And we'll have to work with our public engagement office and the community engagement office about the best ways to communicate and engage with all communities in the city. In addition to the ones that we have where we're meeting with community groups where it's a little bit more organized, when we do projects as well, for instance, when we did the seven sidewalk gap studies and the 8 intersections in our Twin Brook program, for all of the residents that were on the abutting properties for those sidewalk gaps, we were sending out direct mailings to make sure, and we had a walk and roll the block type meeting, which is where we look at that stretch of roadway where there isn't a sidewalk, and we travel from one end to the other with the community, and we let them know what are the plans and what would a potential sidewalk do and what would those impacts be. But also we use it as an opportunity to ask them questions. Be like, oh, here's the sidewalk that's proposed for your neighborhood. How do you feel about it? But also, if it impacts your property in a certain way, does that change how you feel about it as well? And so with those direct mailings, we've also had some success, and we'll continue to do that with future projects. But regarding kind of a general effort for outreach, we'll have to work with our PIO office.
Thank you very much. I'll go to quick hit items on engineering and education. On the comment Councilmember Shaw just raised, I would love to continue our walking meetings, and I know Dr. Miles raised it all. I know it's something we all like and appreciate. I've seen you all going out into these meetings. I think it's so important if we could commit to 2 to 3 at least. I know that you're doing the sidewalk meetings. I think there were about at least 10 that I recall. So that is tremendous step forward. But I just wanted to note Mayor and Council's open and willing, and I think sometimes it helps when we've done them in areas where there aren't necessarily neighborhood associations. It gives opportunities for people to talk to us and to actually experience how they see things. I know that several of us are trying to walk the entire city multiple times, and I always find it so important. I'm always walking around with my camera to see what we can fix, but when you walk something or roll something, you get to have a different perspective than when you're driving by it. So just wanted to note that. Other things for engineering. So during the comprehensive plan, it was noted that we had over 50 segments of sidewalks that didn't have one on each side. How are we doing on that number overall? You don't have to answer now if you don't have it, but I'm always trying to get that number down. So.
It's 50 miles, not 50 segments.
50 miles. Okay, 50 miles. How many miles are we now?
We're under 50. A mile of sidewalk really takes a lot of work.
I know, and it's expensive.
So,
yeah.
And there are really a lot of challenges with sidewalks. I don't need to go through them now, but it takes time. But as you see, we are working on different groups of sidewalks, some of them feasibility, some of them design, some of them construction, so we will just keep going. A good thing, we depend heavily on grants for that, for those kind of projects. The good thing that we get free money, but the bad thing is that those grants take a lot of time. As you know, once you get the grant, sometimes it takes up to a year to get this grant agreement working between us and the agency giving it to us. So it's a slow process. We see some challenges sometimes from sidewalks that residents do not want it, even though we feel as staff that this is priority and this will get a good connectivity between two locations. Of course, the utilities, some drainage issues. So that's why it just takes some time between the feasibility and then we go to the design and then go to construction. But as you know, like 3 years ago or so, we started this process. So now we will start to see some construction happening in the next year or so. And then hopefully every year you will see 3 or 4 segments being built every year. Okay. And then we'll tell you what number is there.
I think it was around 52 or so. So if you could just give us that update on, like, if we were to do all the feasibility things that, the projects that we get are being studied now, where would we be on those mileage? I'm very interested in that. Just always want to make progress and hold ourselves accountable. I will also note that we did increase our tax duplication money from 2 million to over 8 million. And I know that goes into general fund, but I'm hopeful. I know that when we first got some of those funds, we were able to increase our sidewalk prioritization money. So I would love to continue to see that we're looking at those funds to improve transportation, since that's where we're getting the money from. In addition to, I know that part of that is police. So that's my plug there. There are bus shelter issues. I know I raise this question every time. I think there are about 21 that you've noted that, I hope I have that number correct. Feel free to note that are mid-block crossings and potentially are areas of concern. That's something I'm also interested in making sure that we're making progress. I know that we've approved some contracts for maintenance on bus shelters, but we want to see that change, that we're reducing that number of problematic areas where people have to play the game of chicken to get to work or school, and that's not fair. So I wanted to note that. I've also continued to note highway crossings. If you're trying to get from one side of Rockville to the other side of Rockville, if you're crossing to go west of 270 to some of the points my colleagues make on exit 5, it is also a game of chicken. I've biked it, I've walked it. It is not safe. And I've also raised this issue with the Secretary of the State Highway Administration. I would like to know where we are in our conversations on that. On exit 6, there is a nice bridge. On exit 5, there are parts where you have to cross without a light. And so it is just dangerous, flat out. Mr. Simino, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'll take this one. The exit 5 question. As you know, we worked in great detail with SHA and their consultant on laying out improvements for that overpass to the point where they took many of our suggestions. But that was all tied to the I-270 American Legion Bridge project. And as you know, we're not going forward with that in Rockville for quite some time, if at all. And so, unfortunately, I think this is going to play victim to that, because we can't go and ask them to do some improvements there outside of it and spend all that money. We're just not going to make any progress on it. So we may have to look at some lesser means to do this while the bigger project is moving forward.
They're not looking at that again until 2045. So
yes.
I would say that we
Yes.
can't wait that long. And
Correct.
I would also note there's crumbling sidewalks, so if you're trying to go on
Yes.
a bike or wheelchair,
Right.
totally unsafe. I just think that we have to figure out a solution for that.
Yeah, what I'm suggesting is, because of that 2045, we need to come up with a plan B, because plan A is going to be way off in the future, something more cost effective to get some improvements in the meantime until that happens.
Thank you. Some of those mid-block crossings and those intersections of 355 and Brewers Mill, and then this one, these keep me up at night. And I just hope that we don't have any, serious crashes there, but I just wanted to flag that again. The last two things I'll note is just the bike repair racks. I know that you put that you're looking at those. Do we have a time frame? Feel free to respond as to when we're looking at getting those in. And then we always get requests for crosswalks. I know that you're looking at putting some guidelines together, and I appreciate the responses you've been doing with residents who have specific ideas. It seems like some of us want to go out and paint the crosswalks ourselves. I did want to note there are some places where we've heard repeated comments about not having a crosswalk at all, or crosswalks where there's a bend and so the visibility is low and they'd like to have some flashing lights there. So just wanted to flag that as well.
Thank you. I wouldn't recommend anyone go out and paint crosswalks on their own. But again, if there are, for members of the community maybe watching, please don't hesitate to email us about specific crosswalk requests. That's the best way to get it on our radar, and we'll look into it. For the bike repair racks, I believe we had put it as part of an item for with bike parking, and we're actually in the process of hiring an intern, and part of one of their work programs will be identifying locations for that sort of thing.
I highly support you getting more help. Thank you so much for all of the work on Vision Zero. We appreciate the monthly Department of Public Works reports, as well as these regular Vision Zero updates. Okay. Thank you. Any last comments or questions from you?
No, thank you very much, and for the support. It's great.
Keep up the great work. All right, I've convened with some of my colleagues here at the dais that we need a quick 5-minute break. We will begin promptly within 5 minutes, so I'll mark the time is now 9:08. Hearing A, which we're going to start with, proposed amendments to Chapter 10.5 of the City Code, the Forest and Tree Preservation Ordinance to ensure compliance with Maryland State Senate Bill 526, in addition to minor revisions as proposed by staff. Has this been properly noticed?
Madam Mayor and council members, it was noticed on July 20th and July 25th, and also on the city's website for the public.
Thank you. And I believe staff have shared that we had someone signed up that was going to submit in writing. Okay. With that, if you want to introduce it, and then if anyone is compelled to speak here in the audience, please feel free or send us an email. Welcome.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Sean Ryan. I'm the city's Development Review Supervisor. Thank you for taking the time to allow us to speak to you this evening. To lay the groundwork for this public hearing, we have prepared a brief presentation for the proposed amendments to Chapter 10.5 of the City Code. All right, so real quick, I'd like to just start with a brief background of forestry law in the state of Maryland. The Maryland Forest Conservation Act, or the FCA, was enacted into law in 1991 through Natural Resources Articles 5-1601 through 5-1613. The FCA enacted statewide forestry law to combat deforestation associated with development at the state level. The FCA authorized local municipalities to adopt their own local ordinances compliant with the minimum requirements of the FCA. Local ordinances may be stricter than the FCA, however, they may not be less restrictive. This led to the adoption of Chapter 10.5 of the City Code, the Forest and Tree Preservation Ordinance, or the FTPO, in 1992. All right, so apologies, typo on the screen there. So the FTPO was adopted by resolution in 1992. The FTPO ensures compliance with the state's FCA. The FTPO applies to any covered permit or approval, which includes a sediment control permit, site plan, project plan, subdivision, or amendment thereto. The framework of the FTPO mimics the state's FCA to ensure compliance. To ensure compliance. And one of the first aspects of the FTPO is a forest stand delineation, which is a natural resources survey that identifies various resources such as forested stands, topography, soils, environmentally sensitive resources, and other features. One of the second primary components of the FTPO is a forest conservation plan. Forest conservation plans, or FCPs, demonstrate how a site's natural resources will be preserved and interact with the built elements of a development. Elements such as forest retention, afforestation, and reforestation are typically facilitated through FCPs. The FTPO levies several additional requirements for FCPs within the city that are in excess of those in the state's Forest Conservation Act. First of which is minimum tree cover. That is a minimum percentage of canopy coverage on any given tract based on the underlying zoning district, which may not be satisfied via fee in lieu of plantings. Second of which is significant tree replacement requirements, which are required for individual tree removals. And third of which, the city has higher fee in lieu requirements for developments that are not able to meet the on-site planting requirements. Next up is long-term preservation and maintenance. I will mention that the FTPO does require long-term preservation for areas that are required to meet the underlying requirements of a forest conservation plan that I previously mentioned. That's typically facilitated through easements, covenants, and short-term maintenance agreements. All right, so now we move on to 2023. Senate Bill 526 was adopted this last year. It was passed in an ongoing effort to reduce the gradual loss of forest and tree canopy observed in the state since the original passage of the FCA in 1991. Senate Bill 526, also known as the Forest Preservation and Retention Act, amends certain provisions of Natural Resource Articles 51601 through 51613. Senate Bill 526 introduces a number of new exemptions for things such as transit-oriented development, qualifying federal facilities, qualifying multifamily housing, and solar photovoltaic facilities. Senate Bill 526 also establishes a public notice process for the clearing of priority retention areas, as well as a judicial review process for approved forest conservation plans. Senate Bill 526 introduces a new method for calculating reforestation requirements. It also expands qualifying criteria for priority retention areas. It requires written findings in the event of removal of any priority retention areas. And additionally, Senate Bill 526 requires the State Forest Conservation Technical Manual be updated no later than the end of 2024. All right, so now that we've talked a little bit about Senate Bill 526, I'll now hand it over to Shada for discussion on the proposed amendments to Chapter 10.5.
All right, thank you, Sean. To start with the Senate Bill 526, which was again passed by the state in 2023. To sum up the general categories of the FTPO or Chapter 10.5 amendments, they kind of go into two buckets. There's the amendments that are proposed as a direct result of SB 526, and then there are amendments that are more so proposed by staff, which I will go over later on. So to start, these are some of the new amendments that we have proposed as a direct result of SB 526. So to start, there are some new exemptions proposed. For example, forest management is exempt from FTPO requirements, while solar photovoltaic facilities are exempt from afforestation requirements. There are other new exemptions that are not proposed at this time for inclusion in the FTPO, such as transit-oriented development, federal facilities, and multifamily housing. Another proposed amendment as a result of SB 526 is the inclusion of public notices for clearing of priority retention areas. So when a priority retention area is proposed to be cleared in a proposed FCP, there will be a new public notice process established. The process entails public notification mailed to neighboring properties that must be sent at least 20 days prior to the approval of an FCP. And the public notice process includes written and verbal comment that is required before the clearing can happen. Furthermore, with priority retention areas, I apologize. This is the correct slide. Priority retention areas, the Forest Conservation Act already identifies priority retention areas in forest conservation plans, such as streams and buffers, trees and shrubs within 100-year floodplains, critical habitats, steep slopes, and contiguous forests. And in the event that priority retention areas are approved for removal, the written findings for such removals are required. And specifically within SB 526, there are more categories for what counts as a priority retention area. Some new criteria include categories such as certain forests in urban areas and forests suitable for interior dwelling species. There will also be a new judicial review process for appeals of forest conservation plans. And that means that any person can appeal an approved forest conservation plan within 30 days
after the approval by filing a petition for judicial review. Next is reforestation, which is one of the more significant changes to the FTPO as a result of SB 526. The reforestation requirements will be expanded, and that means that the required amount of forest to be replanted when forested and removed will be expanded. So the reforestation requirements in SB 526 differ between non-priority funding areas and priority funding areas, or PFAs. And the city of Rockville is entirely within a PFA, so this means that per SB 526, the new reforestation rate will be, for example, a half acre of forest to be replanted for every 1 acre removed. And this is different from the current Chapter 10.5, which requires a 1/4 acre of forest to be replanted for every 1 acre removed. And this is all for any forest that is cleared above the forest conservation threshold. The forest conservation threshold, for those who might be familiar, will remain as is, though this change will only apply for forests removed above the forest conservation threshold. Forests removed below the forest conservation threshold will remain as is, as a 3-to-1 ratio. And that means 3 acres of forest need to be replanted for every 1 acre removed, again, below the forest conservation threshold. There will also now be, because of SB 526, a 1-to-1 reforestation rate for clearing of any priority retention areas within a PFA, so within the entire city of Rockville. And now moving on to the amendments that are proposed more so by staff rather than as directly from SB 526. Most of the amendments that are recommended by staff are largely related to the FAST work plan, which was endorsed by the Mayor and Council in 2018. The FAST initiative provides improvements to the development and permitting processes by innovating existing and new processes, resulting in a faster, more accountable, smarter, and more transparent process. Several of the action items in FAST would require an amendment to the FDPO. Staff finds that the proposed amendments will result in increased tree canopy requirements, improved administration of Chapter 10.5, it would streamline existing processes, and improve the customer service. We also believe that these amendments will reduce steps that don't currently deliver much value to the city's natural resources, while at the same time delivering change that will result in tangible benefits to the city. And some more detail for these proposed amendments that are recommended by staff. We are proposing some updates and some new definitions. For example, we are adding a definition for a city manager. We are updating the code administrator to be the person or the figure that administers the FTPO rather than what is currently referred to as the city forester. And covered approval, forest, and street tree definitions are all proposed to be updated. In terms of exemptions, staff is proposing to include exemptions that are currently in the Forest Conservation Act before SB 526 was passed, but that were not included in the initial FDPO adoption. That includes an exemption for stream restoration and an exemption for maintenance of stormwater structures. Staff is also proposing an exemption from NRI FSDs for applicants that do not require a sediment erosion control permit or for applicants that are not proposing any impacts to critical root zones of significant trees. This would eliminate the need for NRI FSDs in cases where an application has no significant disturbance to the landscape of a site, such as the change of use of an existing building. The significant tree replacement requirement is also something that we are proposing to update. Currently in a forest conservation plan, the significant tree replacement requirement is for trees 12 inches DBH or greater. So any tree that is 12 inches DBH or greater will require at least one replacement. We are proposing to expand that all the way down to 6-inch DBH or greater. And the reasoning for this is that there are not many undisturbed forest stands left in the city, but there are a lot of individual significant trees in the landscape that make up a large portion of the canopy in the city. So we believe it is important for these significant trees removed through development to be replaced to maintain and expand the healthy tree canopy in the city. There will also be an update to forest conservation funds. Currently, funds that are received through fee in lieu through a forest conservation plan are diverted into two funds, the Forest Conservation Fund and the Park Maintenance Fund. The Forest Conservation Fund is almost exclusively used for planting street trees in the public right-of-way. And Park Maintenance Fund is, as the name suggests, mostly for park maintenance. So we are proposing additional flexibility for park maintenance funds to be used for street tree plantings as well. The Forest Conservation Manual will also need to be updated in order to align with the FTPO amendments. In terms of public outreach, we have implemented a number of public outreach to inform the public about the FTPO amendments and provide opportunities for feedback. In terms of a newspaper advertisement, we published a newspaper advertisement in the Washington Post starting, I believe, July 20th, and that advertisement advertised this hearing and the ways that the public may participate. We also sent a written notice to a list of property owners who own large parcels in the city with significant amounts of existing forests on their properties, because we believe those are the types of properties that would be the more likely to be impacted by the amendments. They received written notice letters a couple weeks ago so that they could participate in this hearing or refer back to the hearing later on. We also held 2 virtual community forums in May 2024. One was geared more towards applicants, developers, industry professionals, and one more for the broader community, though anyone was able to attend either one. And recordings of both the forums are available on the website. In terms of briefings, we introduced these amendments to the Mayor and Council on May 6th and held briefings with the Planning Commission, Environment Commission, and the Park Advisory Board. In terms of publications, we have advertised the FTPO amendments through Rockville Reports and in the Development Watch newsletter, which is a monthly newsletter that I believe we have been advertising in since April. I'll hand it back off to Sean.
All right, thank you, Shada. And consistent with the last slide, as Shada mentioned, we did go to the Planning Commission for a briefing on March 27th of this year. We then brought this item before the Mayor and Council for introduction on May 6th. And today, of course, we're here before the Mayor and Council for a public hearing. Then should the Mayor and Council choose, the remainder of these dates are tentative, but we tentatively have scheduled a September 30th discussion and instruction should the Mayor and Council wish to proceed with that. After discussion and instruction, if instructed by the Mayor and Council, we would need to submit the proposed amendments to Chapter 10.5 to the Maryland Department of Natural Resources for review to make sure that they are compliant with all state law. And then finally, we do have a tentative possible date of November 18th for possible adoption should the Mayor and Council choose to proceed with that. All right, so tonight, recommendation and next steps. Staff is requesting that the Mayor and Council continue with this public hearing on the proposed amendments to Chapter 10.5. As far as next steps, as I mentioned, September 30th is a possible date for the discussion and instruction should the Mayor and Council choose. Following that, we would submit to the state for review. And then following a satisfactory review from the state, we could be back as early as November 18th for possible adoption by the Mayor and Council. That concludes our presentation. So now, should there be any questions for us, or would the Mayor and Council like to proceed directly to the public hearing, staff is available for anything that's necessary.
Thank you. Just a couple clarification. What is your recommendation in terms of the public hearing date closure? or the public record closure. So that we're not gonna be discussing this until September 30th, so I just wanna make sure, I'm thinking it would warrant, since we're not discussing until September 30th, more than the 2 weeks that we normally do after a public hearing.
Yeah, but I would tend to agree with that, Madam Mayor. I would possibly refer to the director, Ricky Barker, just to confirm if he has any thoughts on that matter.
I think, like you said, we're not having it till September 30th, so perhaps we can do the September 1st or something like that. I don't know what day that is. But that would give us time to get the comments and then draft the report and get it into the system.
Okay, so you would typically get us the report on the 20th. Could we at least keep it up till September 13th? That would give you some time to get all, at least.
What is, we try to incorporate that all in the staff report, and plus if we get comments, we'd like to be able to respond to it and evaluate the comments, and so that's why a little bit earlier would be better.
Well, how about September 9th? And I'm trying not to
That's
hit
fine.
right on the summer break.
Yes, September 9th is
And
fine.
also thinking about the Labor Day.
That's fine.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, so are you all okay with this? Okay, thank you. I do note that we received a number of comments in writing. I have reviewed them. I just want to open the floor and see if anyone would like to speak to this specific public hearing this evening. All right. One comment I will make is if we can go through the public hearing comments, because there's some overlap on the tree discussion between 5906 Halpine and there's the trees being discussed in this public hearing, we received some comments that were crossed into different records. And so just want to make sure that some of the ones for 5906 Halpine on the list for chapter 10.5 also get into the public record on that. Is it okay to just make sure we cross-reference that and make sure they're in their proper public hearing
Yeah,
records?
we can absolutely do that, Madam Mayor, and we have informed the case planner, Chris Davis, who will be up next, and he's aware of those comments as well. We'll make sure that they get on the record.
Okay, I counted at least 3, so that would be very, very helpful to make sure that we're recording them where they would like to be.
Absolutely.
All right, and then I know I'm going to be digging in and we'll have more substantive discussion, but some current themes that I've seen, one is just how we are treating, making sure there's no invasive trees that come into the city as part of this. 2 is how we're supporting native tree replanting. And then the approver, we've seen some comments on it being the city forester versus the code administrator, so I just wanted to flag some of those comments. We received several in writing.
Absolutely, Madam Mayor. And would you like me to go through any of those at this time right now, or I just want to confirm?
I'm open to having the answers later. I just wanted to call those specific items out and give you time to process the comments.
Understood. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll have those addressed by September 30th.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from my colleagues? Okay. All right, so we will close this public hearing. However, we will keep the record open up until September 9th. Please feel free to send us feedback. We do read the comments that we get in writing as well as listen to the ones in person. Thank you for your time. We'll now move to agenda item 10B, public hearing on floating zone map amendment, map 2024-00120 and project plan PJT 2024-00019, 5906 Halpine Road, a request to rezone the property from R60 to zone RFFZ, which is residential flexible floating zone, and permit construction of 36 2/2 stacked condominium residential units. Pulte Home Company LLC applicant. I also just wanted to note that as you present this, this is on DNI, so I would like to have the discussion on the closure of this public record as well. Thank you, and welcome, Christopher Davis. And while that's getting pulled up, Madam Clerk, has this been properly advertised and noticed?
Yes, Madam Mayor, on July 20th and July 25th, and also on the city's website.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Glad to be with you again. Christopher Davis with the Community Planning and Development Services Department. Staff has a brief presentation that we'll present to you, and then the applicant also has a very short presentation that they'll let you go through following. So we'll get started. Again, these applications are for a floating zone map amendment, MAP 2024-00120, and project plan application, PJT 2024-0019. Again, these applications are being brought to you pursuant to an adopted text amendment, which the Mayor and Council adopted last year to establish interim floating zones. These zones seek to implement the land uses established in the city's comprehensive plan prior to the city's comprehensive rezoning. And this is the first application of the floating zone in the city. The subject property is comprised of one record lot located at 5906 Alpine Road. The property is highlighted on the screen in red and is 1.51 acres in size. The existing zoning for the property is R60, corresponding to the single unit detached residential zone. The land use designation is residential or residential flexible. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property in order to construct 36 2/2 condominium units on the property associated with several waivers to the setback and layback slope requirements. Staff's recommendation is approval with conditions. Here's the proposed site plan for the project. To accommodate the proposed development, the applicant is proposing to rezone the property from R60 to the city's Residential Flexible Floating Zone, or RFFZ. Article 14 of the zoning ordinance permits the development standards of the RFFZ zone to be RMD 15 unless the comprehensive plan recommends another existing zone, in which case that zone can be designated as the equivalent zone. As the comprehensive plan recommends rezoning of this property to either RMD 15 or the MXNC zone, the applicant has requested that the standards of the MXNC zone apply to this development. Example of the proposed building elevations are shown on the screen. The 2/2 stacked dwelling type refers to two-story townhouse type units which are stacked one on top of the other to create a 4-story building. The stacked units will be a maximum height of 52 feet, and the applicant intends to employ a gabled roof design, which will utilize a variety of facade materials and accents, also with treatments to create a visual interest and achieve an overall aesthetic that is compatible to the surrounding neighborhood. Approximately 38.4% of the site will remain as open space, as shown by the areas in green on the screen, of which 10.2% will function as public use space. As part of the amenities provided for the development, the applicant proposes public use space along the entire Ardennes Avenue frontage of the property. Features of the public use space include pedestrian scale plantings, as well as benches, tables, chairs, and bike racks. Additional open space features includes pathways, seating, and landscaping that is also proposed at the southwest portion of the site. And examples of these elements are shown here on the screen. The applicant is requesting a waiver of the side yard setback requirements of the MXNC zone, which requires a setback of 25 feet or the height of the building, whichever is greater, when proposed abutting residential development such as single-family detached or attached units. The applicant seeks a 12-foot waiver of the required setback to the southwest side property line. The applicant is also requesting a waiver of the 30-degree layback slope requirements of the mixed-use zones. The applicant specifically requests a waiver of 13.8 degrees from the abutting Cambridge Walk townhome property and a waiver of 5.3 degrees from the single-family properties confronting the site along Alpine Road. Staff has reviewed these waivers and finds that the requests are compliant with the findings for approval as detailed in the staff report. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the requested waivers. Staff would like to clarify that the requested waivers are specifically for the building setbacks and the associated building layback slope requirements, both of which deal with how far away the proposed buildings are located from their property lines. The waivers are not related to any requirements dealing with forest conservation easements, and there will be no changes to the terms of the existing forest conservation easements on neighboring properties. There are no setback requirements from the neighboring forest conservation easements on the Cambridge Walk or Twin Brook Station properties. On the screen before you is an exhibit of the subject proposal and the surrounding forest conservation easements, which currently exist on the abutting properties. As part of the project review, staff has requested that the applicant's proposed limit of disturbance, or LOD, as you can see on the screen highlighted in red, be pulled further back from their adjacent property lines to ensure stewardship of the adjacent property's forest conservation easements. The applicant has revised their plans from earlier iterations, and the project's LOD shown on current plans does provide additional distance and buffering from the forest conservation easements specific to the abutting Cambridge Walk HOA property. Several protective measures, such as providing tree protection fencing and root pruning around the LOD, will also be provided to limit the impact of the project on the adjacent forest conservation easements. The applicant will also be providing a management plan from a certified arborist that will detail best management practices along the property lines abutting the adjacent forest conservation easements to further minimize impacts to the adjacent trees. The project will need to comply with all applicable forest conservation and tree protection requirements prior to the approval of the project's final forest conservation plan. In consideration of the applicant's request to rezone the property and in accordance with Article 6 of the zoning ordinance, a floating zone map amendment may be approved by the mayor and council if it finds that the application meets the following criteria. Staff has reviewed the application and found that it does meet the findings for approval for the requested RFFZ zoning. In addition to the findings required for the floating zone map amendment, per Article 7 of the zoning ordinance, the companion project plan application for this project may be approved only if the mayor and council finds that approval of the application will not violate the 5 following criteria. Staff has also found that the subject application meets these required findings as detailed in the staff report. Here's the timeline of the community outreach and briefings that have been conducted for the subject project. As you can see, the project began with its pre-application phase back in the spring of 2023, and most recently, the Planning Commission held a public hearing for the project at its June 26th meeting. At such hearing, the Commission received several comments and testimony on the project, including comments on protection of the abutting forest conservation easements and the provision of visitor parking for the project. And a summary of these comments have been included in the staff report. After such hearing, the Commission unanimously recommended approval of the requested applications, subject to the findings and the conditions in staff's report. So finding that all the necessary findings have been met for the project, staff's recommendation is approval of project plan application PJT 2024-00019 and floating zone map amendment application MAP 2024-00120 with the associated waivers and conditions outlined in the staff report. Specific to this meeting, staff requests that the mayor and council conduct the public hearing and provide direction to staff for preparation of a resolution of approval regarding the project plan and an ordinance for the floating zone map amendment for a future meeting tentatively scheduled for September 9th. To do this, staff would like to confirm whether there are any issues concerning the plan that still need to be addressed, and if the mayor and council is supportive of staff drafting the resolution and ordinance to approve the project with the proposed conditions. And with that, that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Did you note that the applicant is going to have a presentation as well?
Yes, we have that ready to go if you'd like to proceed.
Okay, do you, Madam Clerk, would you recommend that we do that first and then public comments?
Yes.
Please proceed. Welcome. And we have a timer as well. Okay, thank you. You have more than 3 minutes.
Change my, is it
Just wanna
5
make sure you
minutes?
have, no, it's 20, yeah,
Okay.
10. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, Pat Harris with Lurch Early and Brewer on behalf of the applicant Pulte Homes, who's the contract purchaser of the property. We have been before you many times at this point over the past 5 years, so some of this may sound familiar. I'm going to try to skip over the things that, so I'm not repeating what staff said. But we were before you most recently in February, and since that time we've done a number of things. We've met with staff to work out the final issues, including the public use space, the public benefits. We also met with the adjacent Cambridge Walk community. And then, as staff noted, we were before the Planning Commission in June, where they provided their unanimous support for the project, noting that the project satisfied the city's need for housing, it was grade attainable housing, and it was an appropriate infill project. We want to thank staff who's worked with us very closely on this project, and I think they did a great presentation. I want to step back for a moment and sort of give a big picture overview of why this is a good project. And I think if you could go to Exhibit 2 on the sheet. It starts with the need for housing in the DMV, in the county, and also in Rockville. Next slide, please. And the comprehensive plan for Rockville noted that there's a goal of 8,600 housing units by 2040. The comp plan goes on to say that zoning for medium density housing will be likely the most appropriate in transition areas between single family and higher intensity commercial areas. And that's this project. I mean, it describes this project perfectly. The project provides an opportunity for ownership, and even though there's a need for rental housing as well, the ownership units provide a certain benefit to the city in terms of having residents that are engaged in the community. It's also a smaller scale ownership product. The lower level units are 1,600 square feet, which are really entry level market units. Pulte has sold over 200 2-over-2 units in the DMV area, and 60% of those have gone to first-time homeowners. And if you think about that, that's a high percentage, and it's a great statistic to say, hey, we're helping residents and individuals sort of get a foothold on economic stability by letting them start to build equity in home ownership, which is a very positive thing. We're removing an impervious parking lot and replacing it with landscaping and impervious area. We're providing generous setbacks, and we're also making a contribution to the Twinbrook Community Center, as well as providing a bus shelter. If you could go to slide 4, please. Staff gave a oriented you to the project, so I'll zip through the next couple of slides. This slide shows the aerial. The next 2 slides are the church that currently occupies the property, and then this next slide is just the as-built plan. Next slide, please, which shows that the property really consists of a surface parking lot and the church. The Historic Development Commission approved the demolition of the church back in January. The project is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which was adopted in 2021. It notes 2-over-2s are an appropriate product to transition from surrounding multifamily to towns and single family. And it responds to the project's location just 800 feet from the Twinbrook Metro Station. Next slide, please. So as explained, there are 2 sticks of 2-over-2s. The bottom units are floors 1 and 2, and then the top units are floors 3 and 4. The maximum height is 52 feet. Now, I will say that currently the row that is closest to the Cambridge Walk community, which is the row at the bottom, is measuring at 49.69, so below 50 feet, and the other row just over 50 feet. But the problem is we haven't done final grading yet. So that extra 2 feet just allows for any modifications that may occur because of grading. The gable roofs, there was strong support from the Planning Commission and the Mayor and Council when we did our presentation for the gable roof. It provides a product that's in context with the surrounding area. There was actually one community comment that said we don't want housing that looks industrial, which I would say that the flat roof type has a tendency to do that. So we think the gable roof is the right answer for this site. We are providing generous setbacks. The minimum setback along the plan south, the bottom of the page, is 39 feet, and it extends to 52 feet. There will be 2 parking spaces per unit. Each unit will have a garage, and then there's the parking space in the driveway as well. We have generous public use space, which is more than 200. It's like 2.3 times what the public use space is required. And then, if you can go to the next slide, please. So across the front of the property, the top image shows what exists currently, and the bottom image shows the public use space that's going to be provided along Ardennes Avenue. And then the next slide shows that view via street view, the top slide being what exists currently, and the bottom slide shows the public use space that's being provided. We are also providing art in this area, and a couple months ago the art piece was selected, so next slide. And we think that will be a nice addition for the streetscape along the public use space. And then finally, staff showed you the pictures of the elevations, so I don't need to go through that again. So going to the floating zone, as you know, the floating zone was intended to let projects that are consistent with the comprehensive plan and the goals of the city move forward before the new zoning ordinance is adopted. Comp plan dates back to 2021, and we're very grateful for the city's foresight to adopt the zoning text amendment that allows this process. Otherwise, this project would still be sitting on square one waiting for the zoning ordinance. The concept of the waivers, I would say that in some ways I feel like the term waiver is a little bit of a misnomer, but it allows for projects that are consistent with the city's policies and objectives to move forward before the zoning ordinance has been adopted. Staff noted that the waivers are in no way affecting the forest conservation easement that's on the adjacent property, and in fact, and you can tell from the image on the screen, we are enhancing the landscaped area adjacent to the existing forest conservation area, so we're actually improving that area. In terms of the waivers, there are, however, two waivers from the setback requirement and the layback slope. And if you can go to the next slide, please. So this is a section that shows the relationship between the two structures. The proposed structures are on the right and the Cambridge Walk is on the left. There's 65 feet between the two structures, which is a very generous distance. The concept of the setbacks really and the layback so was primarily intended when you have non-similar uses next to each other, when you have a single-family house next to a multifamily, or even maybe a townhouse next to multifamily. In this case, as you can see from the section, they are very similar in nature. If you can go to the next slide, please. One of the things when we met with the Cambridge Walk folks, they were concerned about the shadow issue. And so we did conduct shadow studies, and you can see from these studies that the project is not going to adversely impact the Cambridge Walk community. And in fact, if you look carefully at the shadow studies, you see that, in fact, because we are northeast of them, the opposite is true, that their project casts more shadows on the proposed project. Next slide, please. I just want to run quickly through the changes that we've made before I conclude that since we started this project. So we have set back 10 feet more than what we were originally. We shifted the limits of disturbance back so that our construction area is 9 feet further away from the adjacent property. We've increased the public use space. We decreased the number of units from 38 to 36, and we are satisfying all forest conservation easements on site. We also have added retaining walls along the southern property line because that helps with the grade and limits the disturbance even further. We're extremely excited to be here before you and bringing 36 for-sale units to the city of Rockville. And I believe during the community forum last week, one of the neighbors actually spoke up in support of this. We appreciate that shout out from him, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Right on time. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I'd like to welcome some members of the public who have signed up in advance. Welcome, Joe McLean.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Joe McLean. I'm the president of the Cambridge Walk 2 Homeowners Association, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of them and also the surrounding communities. As you know, our community and our neighbors have been for years very strong advocates for our immediate neighborhood. As you've probably seen, there's a lot of comments you've gotten over the years, not only with the Twinbrook Neighborhood Plan, which I was co-chair of, but also especially the comprehensive plan and a lot of information on the 5906 Alpine Road. I'd like to say that we are not opposed to the development of the property or development in general or housing. We do have problems with the waivers because we thought we'd won these battles in the comprehensive plan, and all of a sudden here it comes again. We think it's a threat to the forest conservation easement, which is a tiny forest but very important to our neighborhood and the tree canopy in our neighborhood. There is this false dichotomy between more housing and trees and waivers, and I'd like to say the facts are in. According to ICE Mortgage Technology and the Washington Post, the 20851 zip code is among the least valued homes in the area, and it has lots and lots of unbuilt homes that have already been approved by the city on the metro property and other areas that haven't been built because of lack of demand and finance. Compare that with our zip code just south of us, where Pike and Rose an enormous amount of development have been built, but the residential streets and their tree canopies have been preserved. And I know what you want is more housing, but that comes from more desirable neighborhoods with the tree canopy there and more amenities. We feel that with the waivers, we're kind of have a bait and switch, in the sense that we thought we had preserved this area as, and in fact we've gotten into a different planning zone because of that, and now we find out, well, not quite. We are not against the Pulte development. We think it'll be a great development, but we think it could be readjusted so it's farther away from threatening the forest conservation easement. So I know we are all in favor of additional housing, and we're certainly in favor of that, but we also want to see our neighborhood preserved, and if waivers are granted, they should be granted for things that improve the neighborhood, improve its livability and desirability. As I said, I don't want to repeat all of the voluminous amount of information you've gotten over the years on this subject, but as you can see, it's important, and we think the city should be consistent in its planning during this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, welcome Dr. Bill Nickel.
Madam Mayor and council members, thank you for this opportunity to speak about the plan to develop the 5906 Halpine Road site. My name is Bill Nickel. I have been a resident of Cambridge Walk 2 community since 1998. I strongly support everything that Mr. McLean has said in his testimony and would like to focus on one issue with the plan: the lack of visitor parking. The current development plan provides no dedicated space for on-site visitor parking. The developer's representatives suggest that visitors can park on the parking pads of the homes being visited. But what if the person being visited has two cars, one in their garage and the other on their parking pad? The developer's representatives propose instead that visitors can park on Ardennes Avenue or Halpine Road, but these are already clogged with parked vehicles, largely belonging to Metro riders and visitors at the nearby Canzo apartments. In addition, the meter parking on Ardennes makes this an unappealing, very short-term option. And parking on Halpine Road is by permit only, except on weekends. Our concern is that visitors are more likely to see Cambridge Walk 2's 8 visitor parking spaces right next door and park there instead. Such intrusions would be a constant source of friction between our community and the newly developed one at 5906 Halpine Road. Alternatively, we think that with some adjustments to the current plan, dedicated on-site visitor parking should and can be found. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next in-person speaker is Mr. Shipwoods.
Right here.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Sam Shipkowitz. I own 5918 Holland Road, which is back-to-back to Halpine. I bought it in August of 1989. I want to start off by mentioning a case that will eventually be of importance. It's not of direct importance it's a California case called Applebaum versus Board of Directors. And the principle is, what is a fair proceeding and what is due process, and sometimes they're not the same. In this particular case, all of the work was behind the scenes with the staff, and there was no input before today for the neighbors to essentially have any input. But let's get down to the basic facts. It's 65,580 square feet, which under R60 means 10.93 detached houses. The present height limit is 35 feet, and I know that because I put up an addition, and Mr. Barker's assistant insisted that I pay a surveyor to make sure that, and turn in a certificate from them, that my addition was not higher than 35 feet. They're asking for 52 feet. And that would present a shadow onto Halpine, and that's not fair to the people. I'm not directly parallel to the edge of their property, but I'm pretty darn close. They proposed 36 2/2 stacked residential condo units. That's essentially the same as a 4-story apartment building. The present use is a church and a children's child care center. Now the main road entrance is to change from Mardan's, the main street, to Halpine, the side street. The side yard setback is required to be 25 feet. My living room I don't know if Mr. Davis is he still here? He's still here. I attempted to expand my living room into my front yard, and he said I can only do it for 5 feet into my front yard. And they're asking for crazy stuff compared to what I'm asking for. The 52-foot height is extremely higher than 35 feet. Now the slope, the layback slope, the maximum is 30 degrees, and they're, depending upon whether it's Cambridge Walk, 43.8 degrees, and Halpine, 35.3 degrees. So essentially they're creating shadows, and this floating zone map amendment is in my opinion, probably unlawful, but certainly disgusting attempt to impose on this community. It is not compatible with the existing and approved adjacent developments. Cambridge Walk, where Mr. McLean lives, is a townhouses. Now, if there was any sense of responsibility and decency, they would attempt to essentially put in a Cambridge Walk 3rd Street.
Thank you for your remarks.
Pardon me?
You're out of time. By 30
It says I'm 25. Oh,
Yeah,
you're saying
you're
25
30,
an hour?
yes,
All right, let me
30
give me
seconds over.
2 minutes here, or 1 minute. There are
Sorry,
two spaces.
sir.
There are
Just
two
if you could
spaces
say your last
required,
sentence.
but only one of them can be outside because the inside garage space will be turned into storage. It does affect the health.
Thank you very much, sir. We have to move to the
The
next
increase
part
in
of our
sewer and
agenda.
usage capacity will be an overcapacity.
Sorry, sir. This concludes. We did give, it's now about a minute over. Thank you so much for your testimony. Thank you. The other comments we received were in writing, so I want to acknowledge those who have submitted, and thank you to everyone who came in person. We really appreciate your testimony as well. City team, we have a D&I later. I don't know how long the applicants will be staying, but do you want us to ask our questions now or later?
Whichever you prefer, if it's feasible to the mayor and council.
Thank you. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Do you have questions? Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this? Thank you. All right. Please come forward. Sorry, they had the sheet, didn't have your name on it, but please announce your name. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joshua Chamberlain. I live at 5707 Halpine Road with my wife, and I'm speaking in support of this change in building the townhomes on the property. Right now, as I'm sure you've all seen, most of that property is currently a parking lot. When you're walking from the metro, the Ordines, frankly, just doesn't look nice. You have the Allairs and those apartments that are built there that do look very nice, and then you have kind of this apartment, and really the church only looks good from the Halpine Road view. In addition, one thing I heard tonight listening was how much we want more walking, we want much more safe transportation. Well, this is an area that's very close to a metro, a place that would be perfect for medium density building. And if you want to have bike shares that can be supported that aren't being pulled back by the county, we're going to need to have more development. And so having more townhomes in this area I think is good. That's part of why my wife and I bought our home, because we like the ability to have a home that's very accessible to the metro, but also very close to some of the mixed-use development that's going on at the Allaire, where we now have bakeries and barbershops that are opening up, which is very nice. So the bigger density we have, the more we're going to be able to support these businesses and the more opportunities we're going to have. The other thing I heard today is concern about parking. I know there is an office building that's rarely in use that's currently also going through a process to be rezoned for residential use. Part of what I heard in their planning commission meeting is that they have more parking than they know what to do with. I think there is ample opportunity outside of this specific property to solve the parking in our neighborhood. I think it's not going to be broken by building these townhomes, nor is it going to be saved by building those townhomes. This is something we as a neighborhood have to come together and fix. And I think the more we can build and the more we can have the infrastructure support the people who are going to live there, the better it's going to be. Also, in addition, because this is a property that's very close to the metro, there's going to be a lot of people who frankly don't need cars. My wife doesn't know how to drive. I have to drive her sometimes, but she mostly metros to work. So there are going to be plenty of people who are going to be using the metro as their main port of transit. There are still people who drive. I myself have to drive to work. It's very annoying. But I think this is an opportunity to continue to grow our neighborhood, and to frankly make it look nicer. So we don't have a massive parking lot sitting there. We have more green development. So this is something I'm very much in support of. And I was asked to speak here on behalf of Vincent Russo, who is the head of the Twin Brook Association. I believe he submitted some comments and a rating. So there are other neighbors who are in support of this development. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this topic? I recognize that there may be more you want to say beyond the allotted time for public hearings. If you would want to, please feel free to send us an email. There'll be a variety of things that come to the city that we can keep under consideration. Colleagues, any questions? Councilmember Valeri.
I would be remiss to not make a comment on this particular development that I am personally extremely excited about the opportunity. My questions are regarding the density, and I guess it's much more for the applicant. I want to preface my comment on density with, I would hope that we don't encourage the falsehood that individuals who rent and do not own are less connected to the community. I heard a comment in your narrative that suggested that, and I'd like to push back as a former renter in this city that I was very much connected to my community. Having said that, I do want to express some disappointment that we don't see enough density at this spot that would then trigger MPDUs coming in. I think that that's equally important as far as affordability and attainability. So I know that there's been many iterations of this particular project, and I understand that there was a process. However, for me personally, that was a disappointment to see the change. So I would be curious about that. We could have that discussion offline. If you want to answer it here, that's great as well. And then my second question is, I believe I brought it up at a previous mayor and council meeting regarding this development, that the public area, it would be a great location for a neighborhood sign, something indicating that you're, welcoming people into Twin Brook, because that is one of the entrances. And so I was wondering if that, while I truly love art, if that would still be under consideration as the Twin Brook neighborhood, our neighborhood, does not have any sort of signage indicating that we in fact exist. So those are my two comments/questions.
Thank you. And first, I duly noted your comment about renters. I wasn't trying to be disparaging toward renters, but I do think that people that own also are very engaged in their communities, and that's the point. In terms of the density, so when this project first started, and when it started, I mean when Pulte became the contract purchaser, their initial plan was to do 64 condominium units in two separate buildings. And that idea was, we had met individually with some council members, and I realized that the board has turned over. I mean, the mayor and council have turned over. So I don't believe anyone behind the dais now was.
We'll confirm I did not have any of those meetings.
Yes, no. And the feedback that we received was that was too much density on the site. And while planning staff, to their credit, thought it was a good thing, and a lot of planning staff has turned over since that time, we realized that there wasn't, at that time, there wasn't going to be support. And so the applicant switched gears and had done 2/2s in other areas and thought that that was a good transition product. So that's where how we ended up with the 36. In terms of this neighborhood sign, we actually liked your idea very much of a neighborhood sign, and we started to run with it. We thought that we could do a artsy sign and incorporate the sign into our art package, but we were informed by the city art staff that if it has verbiage on it, it can't qualify as art. And so therefore we thought, well, now our streetscape was getting pretty busy, because since the time that we were before you last, we also added the bus shelter to the frontage. So we had the bus shelter, we had the benches, we had the art that we had to provide, and it just seemed like it was going to end up being cluttered with the sign as well. So that's the reason that even though we liked the idea and we first took off with the idea of the sign, we decided that it wasn't meant to be on this site, unfortunately.
Thank you. That's extremely helpful, and I would definitely like to follow up our city manager. I'd like to follow up on that particular feedback regarding art, because I think that could be a hindrance to any place in the city that does want recognition of a neighborhood. So just wanted to place a pin in that, and thank you very much for answering my question.
Thank you. I like the sculpture. I think it could have the word Twinbrook on it. So I will just flag
if you can
that.
work that out, we can put the words on it.
We do have a D&I later, so I'm only going to focus on the things that would encourage engagement from you all, and then also just some clarification on the forest conservation piece. I did note to the city manager that I would ask this question just because we did get some emails about concerns about the forest conservation piece and the waiver. Could you please just provide more detail on, you've heard the community feedback and their concern about these waivers. I know that you had a clarifying statement that the city was going to be making on this.
Yes, Madam Mayor. So, as you mentioned, we tried to explain the issues at hand, particularly related to the forest conservation easement. As we stated before, the specific waivers, again, they are for the building setbacks. These are normal requirements required in any development, particularly to make sure that light and air are provided between buildings on different properties. And so that's the specific of the waivers requested by the applicant. They are in no way related to forest conservation easements. I think some of the confusion that the waivers were associated with the easements deal with the fact that the easements run up all the way to the adjacent property lines. So from a practical standpoint, it looks like those setbacks are buffering from those easements, which in a way they are. But by technical definition of the code, those setbacks are for the buildings themselves and not for the easements. So I hope that clarifies, but I can bring back the exhibit and kind of go into more detail if the council would like.
Thank you, and I know that people have commented on the beauty of the trees. Can you just clarify, I believe that there are something in the order of 8 trees that will be removed and 26 added, but if you could provide the facts.
Yes, I believe that's correct. We can confirm the numbers, but I believe you're generally correct about the amount of removals and plantings.
And how will, we always hear about mature trees, how will we look at having a bigger tree canopy in terms of mature trees versus saplings?
I believe in the applicant's proposal, they are proposing a range of different planting species. All of those will be reviewed in compliance with the forest conservation requirements, which have those requirements for the native trees and trees that will be above that sapling range.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're considering that concern. On the comments on MPDUs, I too am very disappointed that we don't have Molly price dwelling units on this site. And part of that is on us as a city, because a comprehensive plan says that we would be moving to any project that has 20 or more units would have Molly price dwelling units. Since we are moving forward on the floating zone amendment map to allow you to apply the intent of the comprehensive plan to move this project forward faster before the zoning rewrite is done, have you considered putting any affordability on this site?
So when we first started the project with the 64 condos, that in fact would have provided MPDUs, and that we were using that as one of the selling points and trying to get support for it because we recognize the need for affordable housing as well. When the 64 then got dwindled down to 36, obviously it did not trigger the MPDU requirement. The public benefits that we are providing in this case, the 2.5 times the public use space, the bus shelter, the contribution to the Twin Brook Recreation Center, we thought were a generous package, and especially since providing the housing to begin with is a goal and objective of the city, especially in this location. And if there's too much imposition, too much burden in terms of what that public benefit package is going to be, it ends up being almost penalizing the project for going forward sooner rather than waiting the 5 years, 7 years, or whatever it would have been from the adoption of the plan to move forward. And 36 units is not that many units. And it, the provision of an MPDU, when the contract was written, when they were not planning, per the city code, there was no expectation that affordable housing was going to be required, and to require it at this stage would be a significant burden to the project.
And what is the average home price that you're looking at these?
I don't know that that's known now, just because there's so many variables. I think I'd go back to that statistic that 60% are first-time home buyers, which sort of gives a little bit of suggestion of where that number may fall. But I don't know if we have a sense of that at this point.
We're building the same, David DeMarco, Pulte Homes. We're building the same units in Farmstead. Pardon me?
David, you can come up.
David DeMarco with Pulte Homes, and we're building these same units at Farmstead in the city of Rockville. I can double check, but they're generally in the 550 to 650 range. We think this is a premium location to that, so it'll be above that. But we have, when we go to market, we'll determine what the prices are going to be.
So 550 for 1,600 square feet potentially.
That's what Farmstead is.
Okay.
These ones will be higher than that. How much higher, yet to be determined.
Yeah. Okay. I still am concerned about affordability. I just want to be on record on that. But I appreciate all the work that you've done. Colleagues, any other questions? I know we'll have D&I to go deeper, but since we have the project folks here, anything that you'll need to learn from them? Okay. Thank you very much for being here to answer our questions. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so staff, will we be closing the public record on this since this is on D&I, pending the outcome?
Yes, staff has no opposition to closing the public record, but again, up to you, Mayor.
And just to continue to note, residents can send comments at any time, of course.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Colleagues, any other comments on this point? All right, thank you. All right, so we're now moving to agenda item 11A, and I want to thank everyone who's come here in person. We will be revisiting this topic under 11C, so just to note there are 2 agenda items before this will come back, just so everyone can plan their own time. 11A is the introduction and possible adoption of an ordinance to amend Ordinance 5-24 to appropriate funds and levy taxes for FY25 budget amendment number 1. Welcome, Mary Sue Martin.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Mary Sue Martin. I'm Senior Management and Budget Analyst in the Finance Department. And tonight I have for you the first budget amendment for FY25. This budget amendment includes several operating and CIP grants, recreation program revenue and spending adjustments to support increased programming, funding for the upcoming August 17th gun buyback event, supported by a contribution from the state's attorney's office as well as confiscated funds, appropriation of general fund reserves that were committed on the FY25 adopted budget ordinance, and reappropriation of funds to replace police radios supported by the federal earmark that was received for this need, as well as one-time tax duplication police supplement revenue. If this amendment is adopted tonight, the total appropriation by fund would change as shown on the budget ordinance in your attachment A. Tonight, staff recommends that the mayor and council introduce the ordinance, waive the layover period, and adopt the ordinance. Thank you.
Colleagues, I'll open the floor for any questions before we move to potential introduction and waiving of the layover period and adoption. All right, I'm seeing none. Who would like to move to introduce? Councilmember Jackson.
So moved.
All right. Now we need to waive the layover period.
Motion to waive the layover period on the budget amendment.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by 2 people, but I think I saw Councilmember Shaw's hand. Dr. Miles, I'll get you on the next one. All those in favor of waiving the layover period, please raise your hand and say aye. All right.
Aye.
Dr. Miles, do you want to make the motion?
I move that we adopt the fund to appropriate funds and levy taxes for fiscal year 2024.
25.
I'm sorry, 2025.
Thank you.
So I accept the amendment.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second?
Okay.
All right. Councilman Van Graag, second. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. All right. Unanimous. Councilman Valeri, did you have a comment? Okay, good.
No comment. I was just saying aye.
All right. All right. So that is done. That is a fast item. Don't go yet because I know we have 11B. And welcome Stacy Webster. This is the introduction and possible adoption of a bond ordinance to authorize a competitive sale of tax-exempt 2024A general obligation bonds in amount not to exceed $27,500,000 for the general purpose of financing the construction of water, sewer, and general capital improvements as reflected in the city's FY 2025 capital improvement programs. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Stacy Webster. I'm the Director of Finance. Tonight we have for you an introduction and adoption of our bond ordinance for our next bond issue for $27.5 million. The Mayor and Council adopted a resolution of intent related to this bond issue on May 6th, the same day that you adopted the budget. This bond issue is consistent with the projects that were adopted in the 2025 budget and will be sold with 20-year terms and level principal repayment schedules. The cost of issuance for this transaction is approximately $250,000 and will be paid from the proceeds of the bonds. The issuance costs cover the fees for the municipal advisor, the bond counsel, the underwriter, and the rating agencies. Our next steps include interviews with the rating agencies on September 5th. With ratings available around September 13th, we're looking to renew our AAA rating with the rating agencies. That's Moody's and Standard & Poor's. We have our bond sale, which is scheduled for September 25th, and bond closing on October 9th. Tonight, we ask that the Mayor and Council introduce the bond ordinance, proceed to waive the layover, and adopt the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to ask a few questions for the listening public to understand. Can you just confirm that this will not impact our AAA bond rating?
We are going for our interviews with the rating agencies, and they will re-rate us. There is nothing that indicates that we will not maintain our AAA rating. We have really great reserves. We are maintaining our finances according to our policies, so we will likely be triple A'd.
Thank you. And we have above the 20% that's recommended. So I just want to confirm for the listening public.
That's correct.
Yeah, which is higher than some other jurisdictions. So thank you for that. And then just for the listening public, who buys our bonds?
So they are publicly bid out. Our last bond sale, which was in October of 2022, we had 10 bidders. They're usually the bigger banks. Our last sale went for a interest cost of 3.74%, which is a pretty good rate for AAA. We're looking for somewhere in the low to mid threes with this sale if the markets stay relatively calm in the next month. We did schedule this sale a little bit ahead of the national election to try to avoid some of that market volatility.
Thank you. And just last question is, I know everyone's thinking about interest rates. How will that impact our bond sales and interest rates?
So I think we're looking, as of today, AAA rated general obligation tax exempt municipal bonds. We're at 3.25%, and I think we will be able to stay around there with our AAA rating.
Thank you. That concludes my questions. Thank you. Does anyone else have questions before we introduce? All right. All right, I will ask if one of my colleagues can introduce. Councilmember Jackson, I'm volunteering. Thank you.
So moved.
All right. Now we need to waive the layover period.
Motion to waive the layover period.
Do we have a second? Councilmember Shaw seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All right. I'm looking at everyone. Councilmember Valeri?
Aye.
All right, good. Thank you. Now, motion to adopt. Councilmember Shaw, do you want to make the motion to adopt?
So I move to adopt. So I move to adopt the ordinance. Sorry. I move to adopt the ordinance of a bond. I move to adopt a bond ordinance to authorize the competitive sale of tax-exempt 2024A general obligation bonds in the amount not to exceed $27,500,000 for the purpose of financing the construction of water, sewer, general capital improvement as reflected in the city's FY 2025 capital improvement program.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second? Councilmember Fulton? Second. All right. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. All right. I'm looking. Councilmember.
Aye.
Thank you. It is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Okay. We'll now move back to the topic of floating zone map amendment, and we'll move to item 11C, discussion and instructions to staff on floating zone map amendments, map 2024-00120 and project plan PJT 2024-0019, 5906 Halpine, a request to rezone the property from R60 single unit detached dwelling residential zone to residential flexible floating zone and permit construction of 36 2/2 stacked condominium residential units, Pulte Home Company. We have started some of our questions during the public hearing. We'll continue the discussion now and decide how we'll move forward. I want to just note I appreciate all the efforts to get this project and to listen to community feedback. I do believe we need more housing. I also appreciate that there's a lot of asphalt that we need to address in terms of some stormwater issues, and I know this project will help to address some stormwater management. And then there are some public benefits. I did have some questions and comments about affordability and just making sure that we're having a net positive on the number of trees impacted. With that, I'll open the floor and see if staff wants to share anything. I know you presented earlier, but do you have any additional comments before we begin our discussion?
No additional comments, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Colleagues, any comments or questions? Councilmember Van Grack.
I just wanted to echo what you said, Madam Mayor, earlier, that I think it's important to note, while there is some potential removal of some trees, I want to commend the applicant and staff working together to potentially put more trees in this area and actually increase the potential green space that it's going to happen. So I agree with the comments you had, and I liked your questions to potentially get more detail into that. And I appreciate the staff and the applicant working together to make sure that we preserve the tree canopy in the city.
Thank you. Anyone else have comments or questions? I have a few, but I'll wait till you all go. If anyone has questions. Councilmember Valeri.
I keep playing who's going to unmute me with some of our staff, so that's kind of funny. No, I really do appreciate all the work that has gone into bringing this development, especially to Twin Brook. It is, as one person at the public hearing stated, extremely close to Metro. It really should be a priority for us to look at all possible development options that close to Metro. I already expressed my thoughts on the MPDUs, and I always appreciate any effort to make housing more affordable. And, going forward, maybe it'll be a nice signal to anyone else that would like to bring in similar kind of infill developments, that this is a priority of this mayor and council. So that being said, I'm very excited for this to occur. I concur with Council Member Van Graff. The less impervious surfaces that we have, especially in Twin Brook, where we do have issues with stormwater, the better it can be for our neighborhood and really for all neighborhoods. So having said that, I just wanted to thank everybody for all the work and look forward to being able to welcome new neighbors. Thank you.
See if there are any other hands online. Okay. All right. I'll ask my final questions. I noted earlier, but if we can add Twin Brook to the art element, I think that the neighborhood would really like that. So I just wanted to put that out there. The parking, I know that there was some comment from the public about potentially people using the public parking within the Cambridge Walk community. I don't know if they have a sign that says, for Cambridge Walk visitors, but I would encourage, in good faith, to support a small sign there. I'm seeing some shaking heads from the applicant. I think that would go a long way with your neighbors. So I wanted to note that. I did want to also thank the idea of the contribution to the Twin Brook Rec Center for 10K. Do we have a sense of where that's going just yet and how that would support the community? Okay, so we'll get more information on that. All right, thank you. All right, I think those are all my questions. I did note that in the staff report that they would be subject to the EV charging and green features by the building code that we just adopted in May.
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay, and the applicant's aware. Okay, shaking heads again. All right, thank you very much. Any other comments from staff before we move to our introduction potentially?
No additional comments, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All right, so last call for final comments. If not, then we don't need introduction, but just instructions to staff and adoption. Councilmember Fulton and then Councilmember Jackson.
No.
I'd like to move to direct the city manager through his staff to prepare a resolution approving project plan PJT 2024-00019 and prepare an ordinance approving floating zone map amendment map 2024-00120 pursuant to the findings of the conditions in the staff report.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions? And thank you to the City Attorney's Office for helping us to prepare a motion.
Yes, Madam Mayor, just one clarifying question about the Twin Brook element of the art. Are you looking for that to be like a spelled out element part of the project? Okay, great.
Yes.
Great, understood.
I think that would support what the community has been asking for in almost every survey. It's to have more signs welcome signs. So it
Understood.
doesn't have to be a traditional sign. It could be a sculpture sign.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
I second the motion.
Councilman Van Grack.
Yeah, I second the motion.
I think we had a first and second already, but I assume, let's move to vote. Councilmember Jackson
We need a
seconded.
second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All right, thank you.
Aye.
Staff, do you have any other questions or clarifications needed from us?
No, Madam Mayor, thank you for your time, and we look forward to bringing the project back to you for final decision.
Thank you. We did receive a number of comments about the forest conservation area and email. I remember talking to the city manager and city clerk's office. Can we send a clarifying email so that everyone knows the total number of trees added and clarifying any information that you feel is necessary per what you shared with us this evening?
Definitely, Madam Mayor, we can follow up with the public on that.
Thank you very much. All right. We're now moving on to old new business, which somehow is before future agendas. Can we, this time it's before future agendas. Is that intended? We usually do future agendas first.
We don't have any this evening, future or mock.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so we'll move to old new business. All right, well, I'll have one. So the county is looking at the implementation of the, go ahead.
Do the chair appointment for me, please. To the Personnel Appeals Board.
Yes, we'll do that. Thank you. We'll have that. I have another, I'll finish this thought and then we'll move to the appointment. Thank you, Madam Clerk. So we know that there's been comments on a noise abatement, that Montgomery County only gets 3 locations. I want to see if my colleagues would be open to me working with staff to draft a letter to the county recommending one of those being Rockville. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. No, I would be really in favor of this. I wouldn't, as you know, testified in favor of the noise abatement cameras. And so, yes, I think advocating for Rockville to get one is the right way to go. So I would totally be in favor of that.
Thank you. Councilmember Valera, are you seconding?
I am more than happy to second that one.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. So now we have the appointment to serve as chair of the Personnel Appeals Board. There was an email that was sent to us by our city clerk, and I had shared an update as well. We need a motion to appoint. So just so you know, this would be an appointment for, since I don't see it here, Gary Funkhauser for a 1-year term as chair of the Personnel Appeals Board.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Fulton, thank you for making the motion, seconded by Councilmember Jackson. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Any other old new business items? Okay. Well, I know that everyone wants to get back to watching the Olympics of whatever is left. Thank you, staff, for all of the hard work in preparing our agenda for today. We will be going on recess. We have a public meeting scheduled for, I believe, September 8th, and we'll be getting that posted in a timely manner. Thank you all. We need a motion to adjourn. Councilor
Moved to adjourn.
Thank you. Councilman Valeri, second. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. All right, have a good night, everyone. Take care. Thank you.